My micromechanism thanks you. My computer tapes thank you. And I thank you. Warning! 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 Alien approaching!
What?
Groovy Bean here. Welcome to Full Disclosure Now. You can find me every week right here at www.fulldisclosurenow.com. We are a donation station. The sheep don't sleep here, so if you like what you hear and you want more of it, show the Babylonian love. Hold the phone, Groovy Bean. What is the Babylonian love? Our economic system originated in Babylon thousands of years ago. That money in your carcass purse is just that. So if you seriously appreciate what we were doing here, is where you, yes you, the listener, can participate and help make a difference. Click that donate link on our host page, folks, and follow through. If you want more information on the bean here, go to www.groovybean.com.
Researcher Richard Dolan, author of the book Day After Disclosure, states, "The implications of a UFO reality and cover-up are profound. It means that our society has lived in an official reality so incomplete, so inaccurate, that we may with justice call it fictitious. It means that the history we have learned, the science we think we know, and the very core of who we think we are need to be rediscovered." To engage this process of rediscovery, stay tuned to Yvonne Palermo's Disclosure News.
Right here. Captain. Damn it, Jim, what the hell's the matter with you?
12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour.
Hey, happy Friday evening, 999. Good evening to you all, and welcome to Full Disclosure Now. I am your host, Yvonne Palermo, a.k.a. the Groovy Bean, the place where seeds grow. We spark change, all us groovy little beans here to feed the planet. We are the change we seek. Looking within first, we find who we are without our ego baggage. Then our true essence, our energy. Yes, our energy, beaming light of love, wholeness, mindfulness, can branch out and share this as together we pack one power pineal pop of goodness. Let's all put our love light energy towards one another in this moment and hold our vigilance as one. Holy social media pants, do a dance, stay in the know with FDN. FDN stands for Full Disclosure Now. We are on Twitter, Facebook, give it a like, and YouTube. Same goes for me, a Groovy Bean, spelled GROOVIEBEAN. Website is www.groovybean.com. To the group here at FDN, the term full disclosure is the embodiment of an individual's journey in seeking their own truth. It is the understanding that all of us have been lied to, that none of us knows the truth, and that even the liars are lying to each other. It is an understanding that this world we live in has become a self-perpetuating enigma within itself, and it is up to each of us individually to take the journey towards disclosing truth as a community. Since this movement started, we have been approached by individuals both praising the use of the angelic divine numbers, along with others cursing the use of Illuminati occult satanic numbers. For us here, the numbers 1111 represent neither. The symbolism of 1111 for us is the representation of a group of individuals unified together. That is it. It is about accepting our individual journeys while choosing to walk together as a community toward a common goal of full disclosure. At this time, I'd like to send a holler out to all of our friends and goodness in the live chat room, and of course to all of you listeners. So folks, if you're wondering where is the chat, hey Groovy Bean, what? Where is this chat? There's a little white bubble on the bottom right of your page. Just click on that and it should open up for the live chat. We do have some rules, my friends. The rules are as follows. To ask a question for any of us on air, you must have all questions in capital letters. Yeah, because I'm really blind as a bat, that's why. And also, please chat away with respect to all who gather here. Upcoming shows next week, September 15th. Yes, we're going to have some speakers from the Transformational Shift Events Conference for October. Tolek, Stuart Swerdlow, Jim Nichols, Cheyenne Stone, Adana, and I, and Mark Kimmel will be talking. That's going to be Thursday night that will be 6 p.m. Pacific time, I believe. Yes, September 16th is Amy Moutre, Cosmic Sovereignty. Want to be a guest? Well, hey, send me an email to groovybean@gmail.com. Stay in the know with the show. Subscribe at groovybean.com. You will receive an email from me for all the current shows. Disclaimer, any guest and or topic that I have on my show, listener discretion is advised. Each person needs to discern for themselves the validity of guest claims. I leave it up to each listener to discern for themselves. Lastly, folks, don't forget, we are a donation station. The sheep don't sleep here, so if you like what you hear and you want more of it, show some of that Babylonian love dovies. All of us hosts have a PayPal link, a donate link on www.fulldisclosurenow.com. So, happy Friday, friends. Everybody just tuning in and getting comfy. Tonight, who was that? Yes, tonight, my friends, we are not discussing Chewbacca. What? Yeah, he's getting a little snippy over there. No, Chewbacca. We are discussing the heart chakra. That's right. Dancing with your feet is one thing, but dancing with your heart is another. And tonight I am honored to be dancing with some great friends of mine. That's right. And yours too. Yes. We have a round table with no kings or queens, but like you, the listener, we are all knights for truth, understanding, and knowledge. We sit together in a universal circle, holding the light in wholeness, honoring our authenticities and navigating our frequencies together in love. I would like to bring on each friend one at a time. I'm going to read their biography first, and then I'll bring them on, folks, because, man, do we have a fantastic panel this evening. All right, Justin Deschamps. As a physics, psychology, and spirituality student, Justin has been searching for truth all of his life, looking to make sense of all the insanity in this world. In that time, he has developed a holistic body of knowledge linking science, philosophy, and spirituality into a single framework of ever-expanding understanding. Justin's goal is to share what he knows with the world, becoming teacher to those who are ready and a student of all others. The path of truth in a world of deception is not a lonely journey. Each of us are essential to gaining a complete picture, and once we set aside egoic concepts of what is right and wrong, we begin to walk the path of truth as one people, united for change. Justin's website is www.stillnessinthestorm.com. His Facebook group is The Sitz Show, and that is one word, SITSSHOW. And hey, Justin, are you there, my friend?
I am. It's great to be here. Thanks for the lovely introduction.
You're very welcome. I'm so excited. Are you excited? I am.
I am. Can you hear the crickets?
There they are, folks. We've got a chorus of gorgeousness singing to us, so I know this is truly going to be a fantastic show. I do want to give a shout out to Coco. Welcome. Hello, Desiree in the live chat. Now, let's talk about Og Telez. Who am I? Who am I, it says. This is a personal testimony of the experiences that go beyond the mundane limitations of mainstream reality. Og was shown many things by those who work behind the scenes. Og Telez is here to inform you, the public, about the realities of DUMBs, the Deep Underground Military Bases, or DUMBs for short. In these bases, various projects are carried out. These projects range from military abductions, which is the MyLabs. For some of you, we're all learning together. So military abductions, MyLabs, genetic engineering experiments, mind control, and trauma-based mind control, which is torture, and the development of zero-point energy devices, which can transfer the consciousness of a living human into a cloned body. There are more experiments and matters to go into, but that is the basis of the bases for now. And folks, if my dogs are barking tonight, I think Sasquatch himself is out there. There's not much I can do, but that's okay, right? Yes. So, Og Telez, are you there?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I do want to let folks know, Og's blog is packed and stacked of fantastic information. I do want to give you, I'm going to spell out his name for you, okay? It's AUGTELLEZ.wordpress.com. Correct, Og? Yes? Just want to double check.
Yeah, that should be it.
All right,
it's
thank
a little
you.
messy right now.
It's okay. We like messy, though. Well, welcome. Okay, next up, my friends, Spencer E. Oh, wait, where's my sound effect? Hold on. I got to play this sound effect for you folks first. Arg! That's right, because Spencer E. is truly a cool, groovy being, and he's a pirate. Yes, he is. Truly an individual outside the confines and paradigm of conventional wisdom, has been offered many an opportunity to speak his heart on topics regarding his esoteric and occult experiences, but has thus declined every invitation until now. With just under 570 subscribers on YouTube, Spencer has made a name for himself openly discussing Donald Marshall's cloning center disclosure, his own experiences with the umbrella organization known as the Illuminati, and proposing a passionate manifesto for anyone who seeks a progressive community of like-minded, kindred kind. Though he no longer associates with Mr. Marshall and the information empire Spencer had a monumental hand in forging, he still networks with those who seek to only further their lust for information and help the hungry who strive to actively subscribe themselves to a more peaceful state of being. He does his sincerest to exist candidly, honestly, and simply. Teacher to many, but student to all, Spencer looks forward to sharing what he can in the time that's never enough. Spence, are you there?
Hello, howdy, aloha, osiyo. How's it going?
It's so good to have you, Spence. Thank you for being here. Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
All right, my friends, one more fine folk is joining us tonight, Eric Rains. Eric has been diving into the etheric realms all of his life. After a series of unfortunate events, he found himself in the darkest point of life he had ever been in. And in the depths of this darkness, he realized he didn't want to feel that way anymore. He found the light inside. He found how to smile for the sake of being happy. This led to an intensive year of energetic activations that culminated the night of Valentine's Day 2013, where he became aware of the etheric parasite construct. This construct is the reason the world is the way it is. The greed, anger, jealousy, and shame we call human nature is not us. It is literally implanted, and after that night he was able to remove it from himself and people. He has been working to educate about it and teach people how to remove these systems from themselves ever since. Now folks, I do want you to check out his website. It is unleashingnaturalhumanity.com. Also on Facebook, Unleashing Natural Humanity is his group, and he does have a fantastic YouTube channel as well. Eric, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Woohoo! How are you doing?
I definitely can't complain. I'm excited for tonight.
I am too. I'm so excited and honored to have you all on tonight. Now, folks that are just tuning in, again, we have a fantastic roundtable. The topic tonight is heart chakra. And no, that's right, not Chewbacca. Now, listen up. We are going to start with a breathing exercise from Eric Rains, and then we're going to dive in to the heart chakra, starting with Spence. So, Eric, I'm going to hand it over to you, my friend.
Alrighty. So, it was my journey along the into the realms of Qigong that actually showed this to me, and it's a very interesting style of breathing. Now, the ancient Chinese didn't have any types of electronic equipment or anything like that, and yet they understood that the whole entire holographic nature of reality was completely and totally empty, that the atom is 99.999% empty, and they knew this. And this was all through the science of the mind, the science of consciousness, that they actually figured this out. And the soul itself, it is, you don't need to feed the soul. It's eternal. It's constantly got its own supply of energy that it's creating on its own. And the body that the soul is inhabiting is part of the holographic universe and actually needs energy in order to survive. Now, of the three things that we actually ingest, there's food, there's water, and there's air. And of the three types of chi, air is the most powerful. And it's very simple to actually transmute the holographic nature of the molecular structure of the oxygen, the nitrogen, carbon dioxide around us that we're breathing in into its base form of energy. It's the consciousness that's the catalyst. And so what we're going to do as we start to really focus on this as we're breathing in is recognizing that it's not just oxygen that we're breathing in. What we're breathing in is chi. We're breathing in vital life force essence. And so what I want everybody to do is really start paying attention to the way that they breathe. And one of the easiest ways that you can actually do the abdominal breathing is put one hand on your chest and one hand on your stomach and take a deep, relaxed breath in. Let's just go ahead and try that right now. And what you want to notice is if your chest is moving more than your abdomen. And if your chest is moving more than your abdomen, what you're going to want to do is start focusing on the abdominal muscles to do the breathing for you. So with that hand on your chest, you're going to want to hold that right there and have the hand that's on the abdomen start lifting that up and then chase it with your stomach as you're breathing in. And so what we're doing right here is we're bypassing the chest for the breathing pattern. What we're going is straight to the abdominal construct where most of the energetic centers are. Every single organ inside the body has a meridian that flows through it. And this is where most of our energy actually flows from. It comes from the heart space and then it goes straight down into each organ, and that's the way everything actually operates inside the body. So if you look at a child all the way up to about the age of 5 before they start their breathing patterns and you lay them flat on their back, you'll recognize that it's the abdomen that's moving up and down. And from a physiological standpoint, what we're seeing here is they're keeping everything clean. They're using the abdomen almost like a bellows. It's breathing in and out, and it's squeezing on the organs, bringing new stuff in, taking old stuff out. And it's through, especially in today's society, you start getting a gut, you want to suck it in, and it's actually stunting our health. And so what we're doing right here is we're recognizing that we want to take our breathing back to the abdomen. And they've done scientific studies on this that show that you can actually add 10 to 15 years to your life just with the physiological aspect. So let's go ahead and just sink into a slow, relaxed, deep breathing pattern here. Deep, slow inhale. Really stretching out that stomach. Focusing on relaxing the abdomen, relaxing the abdominal muscles, the ribs, the lower back, the pelvis, the organs. And strain is the exact opposite of what you want here. So as soon as you feel like you're straining in order to inhale, go ahead and reverse it and breathe out. Nice and relaxed. Now this is just one step of the process right here. Now what we're going to do is actually add the energetic component. So with that deep, relaxed, slow inhale, what we're going to do is recognize that it's not just air that we're breathing into the meat sacks that we call lungs. We're breathing in chi. We're breathing in vital life force essence. And recognize this. And you can flow this to anywhere in your body. And one of the places that I like to focus on is the lower dantian, which is about 2 or 3 inches below the belly button. And so what you want to do is with a deep, relaxed inhale, feel this life run through your face, down the neck, through the chest, into the abdomen, right to this spot in the upper pelvis. And what you want to do as you're visualizing this breath into this area is almost picture like you're filling up a balloon there. But instead of making it bigger, you're making it brighter. And I always use gold energy. That's my go-to for everything. So I end up with a beautiful, bright golden sun right in this area. Let's just go ahead and focus on that for a little bit. Deep, slow, relaxed. Really fill this area up. Breathe the life force essence right directly into here. Now we've got one more component to this breathing exercise that we're going to add. So at the top of the inhale, go ahead and hold your breath for about 3 to 4 seconds. And visualize this energy that you're breathing in swirling around inside your body. You can use any type of visualization you want for this, like current in the river, whirlpools, cyclones, blenders, anything, just swirling around inside your body, dislodging anything that you don't need, anything that doesn't serve you, anything of the negative component. And then on the exhale, just gently breathe it out. Transmute it into carbon dioxide. Get rid of it. Breathe in the life. Exhale what doesn't serve. Now, as I was saying earlier, that we can breathe this into any place in our body. You can breathe down into the bottom of your feet if you wanted to. Since this is all about the heart space, what we're going to do is focus directly inside the actual energetic center of the heart. So I want everybody to just go ahead and focus directly inside the chest and recognize that it's not just oxygen that we're breathing in. We're breathing in life force essence. We're breathing in chi. And just take a deep breath that opens and expands the energetic center of the heart. Really turning it on. Brighter and brighter. Now, one of the most important things that you can do for the heart space is actually connect the cognitive thinking abilities to it. Up inside the head, this is where we cogitate. This is where the thought process is. The heart space is more of a knowing. It's an understanding of the vibrational field around us. And by linking these two together, you can actually form a pathway that links the mind, the body, and the spirit together. And it gives you a much clearer understanding of the physical reality around us. So what we're going to do is, as we take a deep breath into that area inside the heart space that we activated, we're going to breathe up through the neck, right directly to the center of the head, and make a clear energetic connection between the pineal gland and the heart space itself. Deep breath in. And on the exhale, flow the energy from the head down into the heart space. Inhale from the heart up to the head. Exhale from the head to the heart. Let's just do this a few more times. Beautiful. Go ahead and open your eyes. Gently come back. Give yourself a little bit of a shake. Wiggle around inside your body. Move your fingers, your toes. And just focus on how you feel.
Wonderful. How's everybody feeling?
Outstanding.
Yes. Justin, Og? You guys there?
That's very powerful.
Yes.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, I was trying to find my mute button.
No worries.
Yes, quite balanced, very clear. And for me, when I get into this clear headspace, it's not that the thought stream stops flowing. It's just that I'm in more control of being able to observe it without being overwhelmed by it. So, quite nice.
Beautiful.
I kind of want to throw up the idea that that's part of a sacred process. You can do it in a variety of ways. The key is really simplicity, because it simply is what it is. Our visualization has an effect on the body, on our biology, and the immaterial biology we can't see. And I still do have a whole bunch of stuff written up. And each way it kind of led to different, maybe epiphanies or, just resolutions. And one of the final ones is how doing that process links the breathing to your heartbeat and your brain waves, and that when it is initiated in sync, it literally creates that harmony. There's a psychological and maybe neurochemical, as well as some energetic, there's an actual effect. And it ties into a whole bunch of stuff with the way DNA or emotions or the heart, there is a way to connect across maybe what we would call spatial or temporal boundaries, and there's a whole lot to explain it. I'll try to get through a lot of it by the end of the show, but I don't know, I just had to say that because he kind of wrapped everything up into a punchline that went right to it with an exercise. And honestly, if people learn to do that, that would be enough to cause civilization-wide change all over the world. It's an actual process and the more you do that, the more you make your body capable of it.
Absolutely phenomenal. Thank you for sharing that, Og. And folks that are just tuning in, if you missed out on that meditation, do not fret. You will be able to do that in our archives. Now, I'm going to hand this over to Spencer. Spencer, could you... I know you, Spencer. You are the pirate of your ship. Could you teach us about chakras and the heart chakra, please?
Sure. I just took a couple of notes, like here and there. But what I seem to gather, like just a brief history of the formalization of the chakra system itself. It started anywhere from 1500 to 500 BC in one of the earliest written texts we have available to us, called the Vedas. And that was kind of one of the very first primitive explanations and gathering of information at the time to kind of, instead of just it being like an oral tradition, which it had been previously before we really started to harness cuneiform, we wanted to formalize it, things of that nature. So that's where you start seeing kind of just the base origin of like the term chakra. And chakra itself roughly translates to wheel. And when you look at some old diagrams and things of that nature, it's always every energy point along the main meridian in the chakra system is it's pictured as like the wheel of a chariot. And they're not saying we literally have these wheels in our body. It's just it's the cyclical nature of it. It's the thing that always balances itself. There's no weighted side of a circle, as to speak. So we've got 7 basic ones that most people recognize. Starting at the base of the spine, we have the root chakra, which represents just the carnalness of survival instincts and things of that nature, and that also corresponds to the element of earth. That's a very, very grounded thing. It's the root of all things, the root chakra. And then you have the sacral chakra above that, which corresponds to water, and it would be the energetical center of emotion in our body, and that's located just below the navel, and that tends to regulate the more emotional side of things. If we see that energetical center balanced, there's not too much going astray in the way the person either treats themselves or others. And all of these things have Sanskrit terms as well, and those, that's what I find interesting, is just the origin of things and speaking the native language. But moving right along, you have the solar plexus, which is just located between the diaphragm and the navel itself, and that's represented by fire. It's that drive in us. It's that thing that gets us going. It's that passion that lights us, that puts us that much more forward, keeps the foot going one after the other. And that's represented by fire, because everybody equates passion, fiery passion. So there's that, and that corresponds to yellow. It's a very, very piercing thing, yellow. It's a primary, very, very primary thing. And so just above that is the topic of the evening. You have the heart chakra, anahata in Sanskrit. And it's represented by the color green. And the element that corresponds to the heart is air. And that's located right in the center of the chest, right where, we filter air. And so it's one of those things that it's you can feel air, but you can't see air in the sense that when people connect through the heart, it's not something that's like seen. There are things that come through that with that, but you can't. It's not particularly measurable. It's just something you feel, but it's not really seen as much. So it's very, very fitting that it corresponds to air. And then, of course, following shortly after, you've got the throat chakra, represented by a very light blue. That everything past the heart chakra is an aspect of spirit. Everything below is it's more of a material aspect. And when you move past the heart, going up, as it were, you see the physicality of things break down, and it becomes very, very internalized. And when you have the throat chakra, or the Shuddha in Sanskrit, when that's in line, people have no issues communicating whatsoever. And I tend to be pretty long-winded, and that's something I always have to do my sincerest to keep in check. But moving right along, you have the third eye chakra, the chakra in the center of the brow, and they call it the third eye because it is I guess it's another means of looking at things. And you can look out at the world through a certain perspective, but it takes a certain kind of filter to really look internally. And when people really want to refine that inner standing, it's good, I think, to have a decent grasp of having a balanced third eye. And it's just another aspect of spirit, or the ether, as you however you want to slice the pie. And last and not least, we've got the crown chakra, the top of the head, this thing that sits truly where a crown would be. And everybody, in their own respect, is the king or queen of their own perspective. Everybody, as an individual, deserves to truly embody that sense of individuality. And we receive so much from the crown chakra that if and it goes without saying, really, that if one chakra is out of balance or overloaded or undersaturated, that the whole system in its interconnectedness tends to siphon from other places. And there are there's something like 100, 200 something chakras in the body, but that's just energetical points. And then we're getting into Chinese medicine and acupuncture. But the main meridian we focus on is that primary thing. Just one more thing. What I find so fascinating about terms and their origins is really breaking down the phonics of it. So when you look at the key things like vowels and consonants, like when we began speaking, everything had a meaning, and we kind of divvied that up and lost some things along the way. But when you have a word like anahata, I wanted to specifically break this one down because it's fascinating. It's beautiful to me. The awe, it's a very purifying thing. It's ultimately just this permeating purification. So you have that one carrying, powerful, potent thing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 times throughout this one word, and it's a very pure thing, the heart. So you have na, and the n represents the self, that hard consonant sound, in which all of the vowel sounds are carried through. So you have the pure self, the ana, and the H, the hard H sound is it's supposed to represent the unchanging, the uplifting. So you have the self that's uplifting and unchanging, all very, very pure. And the ta, the anahata, it's represented through time. So when you string together the most primal phonics, you can tell a story about just that key thing. So anahata, in its most like primitive breaking down of phonics, is purity through the self, through the purity of unchanging, uplifting in time, and it's all held together, and it's like it's interwoven between all of this goodness. And at this point, I'm just rambling, but that's just kind of a brief, elementary, basic introduction. Here you go, Buckaroo.
Wow, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Justin, Og, Eric, you have anything to add, or what are y'all thinking?
Oh, definitely. I could definitely add some more understanding on an energetic sense. Like if we actually step back and look at the human body, it is a representation of a Tesla coil, or actually, in fact, a Tesla coil is a crude representation of a human body. Mm-hmm. So the open system that we operate with, that's the brain. It's the one that we can think with. It's the one that we interact with. The closed system is the more primal, instinctual nature of the human nature of the human body. And so when we actually look at like a fetus when it's developing in utero, there's a massive neuronal tissue that forms that splits into 3 different parts. And the small part in the middle, that actually turns into the heart. The upper part becomes the brain, and the lower part becomes the intestines. Now, let's look at a Tesla coil real quick. At the bottom of it, inside the actual construct, hidden behind everything, is the closed system. It's the coil that wraps around, that it goes through a transformer, and then it operates on the open system up top that we can actually interact with. And there's a ball up top, there's a transformer in the middle, and there's a coil in the bottom. Let's look at the human construct. We have a ball up top, that's the brain, transformer in the middle, which is the heart, and then the intestines are literally coiled inside. And so with this understanding right here, we recognize that the heart is the balance point. The heart is the middle of the I guess you could say, electronic or energetic systems that are actually inside the body. And so by bringing everything into alignment, as Spencer was saying earlier, we've got 3 above and 3 below. The 3 above operate with the more spiritual foundational nature, and the 3 below operate more with like the interaction with the physical reality. And so when we can bring those into balance, we can literally activate the Tesla coil. And, you know, with the intestines being neuronal tissue, it really kind of brings into focus what you want to put into your body, because it's literally your belly brain. Everybody's heard this statement or this description before. It's, you know, that gut instinct. It's the understanding on a level that we can't really operate with inside the cognitive physical thinking inside the head. And so the heart space itself, there's just such a massive energetic field around it that when you start bringing everything into balance and you don't, stay too far into the physical or stay too far into the etheric realms, and you stay right centered in the middle, you turn on an energetic field that can literally stretch out around the world. And this heart space, this heart chakra right here, it's very, very powerful. It operates on a DNA level that we can literally interact with anybody, anywhere, any place. It's a very, very powerful energetic center.
Definitely. I'm trying to think, how does one, okay, so with the different levels and the different chakras, how does one know, I guess specifically since we're talking about the heart chakra, but how do you know that it's out of balance, or would you call that being blocked chakra?
Well, it definitely depends upon the level of the parasitic construct that's infecting the person. If you can free yourself of that, naturally humanity snaps back into an operating system that is less complex, more powerful, and more direct, I guess you could say. So I don't operate off of the 7-colored chakra systems like a lot of people do. I operate off of the Dantian system, which is it comes from the Chinese acupressure or acupuncture in the meridian lines, and they recognize that the major energetic centers in the body were in the upper pelvis, lower abdomen, the heart space, and in the head. And so with that activation that I had that actually made me aware of this parasitic construct, I merged all my colors into gold light, and I only have 3 major energetic centers that I operate inside the body, so it's a lot easier for me to tell if I'm out of balance because I only have 3 things that I'm working with. But it's all like with the 7 colors that we see inside the chakras, that's only the visible spectrum of light that we can actually see with in this physical reality with our physical eyes. That's only about 5% of the actual light spectrum. We have, infrared, X-ray, gamma ray, ultraviolet, all these different spectrums of light and sound that operate with light that we can't access when we're stuck inside of those. So that night that I had that activation, everything turned back into gold. And so the whole theory behind that is if you take a beam of sunlight, the bright white golden sunlight, and you break it apart with the prism, you can actually see all the spectrum of color inside of it. And so what's going on is I've integrated everything in. And so that's the way I operate. A lot of people don't operate that way. And I used to operate with the 7-color chakra systems too. And there is a lot that you can do with it. I used to do some really good work when I was doing Reiki on that level. But, once I activated this and it merged those centers into just 3, I've got, the bottom, the mid, and the upper. It's really easy to tell if you're out of balance. It's almost a physical type of a sensation. Thinking back, before I did this, I would feel, I guess you could say, off. Like I wouldn't feel like I would be able to flow the energy through my body correctly. I wouldn't be able to see the colors of the chakra centers clearly. And so you can actually go through like a meditation, take your consciousness and drop it down inside your body into the root area and feel the redness, feel the primal nature of it. And, and you can start from there and work your way up, feel the orange, feel the yellow, feel the green, feel the blue, the indigo, and the violet. And then you can, really kind of take every single center and change them to the color of the one that you want to focus on. And whichever one that you can't really see very clearly, that was the one that I figured was blocked. But that was before I could see the parasitic construct. After I could see it, I just pull those things out, and all of a sudden you could feel these colors again, no problem. So, I'm probably not the best person to ask about that, actually. So.
That's okay. We have many, many great minds on the panel tonight, and I do want to let the listeners know. Right now, we're discussing the heart chakra. I see some questions in the live chat, and if there is time at the end for those questions, maybe we will get to those. But for right now, we're taking any questions in regard to chakra and heart chakra this evening. So thank you so much, and we appreciate you tuning in. And Og Telez, would you like to discuss a bit on what Eric was talking about, or balance, or block chakras, or
I could
if you like.
It's funny, Eric, you said the Dantian, and You're like mentioning things on this like sheet that I've written up. It's kind of funny. The when you asked about how would one know or what would happen, I kind of have the same idea. The first thing, the way that I would describe it is through the limitations that would become apparent, which would pretty much be a constriction on the ability to adapt or let go of certain things and just to grow, which results in stagnation. I guess it results in repetition first and then stagnation. And when there is a controlling factor in one's life, basically that I'm not sure really how to pinpoint, but ultimately if it is trauma-based, one will be able to trace the memory back into that. Well, they'll have to trace the memory back in order to be able to release it, basically. And if that goes on long enough, then there's basically emotional restriction, and ultimately that threatens the functionality, if you will, of the identity that we represent. We pretty much choose to represent ourselves as, and then it's this is like the fringe of the fringe. But there is like I don't know if I should even say it because I don't have an opinion on a lot of things, and I don't know where exactly our current knowledge system is going to lead to, and I don't know the whole truth, which is a part of a lot of the epiphanies that are coming through, which is that there is no real ultimate of anything; it just continues. But there's like a theory or a school of reasoning where the chakra system is like a control system, and that the separation of I guess we could call pure awareness into layers is kind of like an entanglement or a containment system for that higher energy. And I don't have any opinions to either side, but everyone should at least know that is part of the not conspiratorial, but the kind of new kind of knowledge that is coming out with a blend of conspiracy and conspiratorial information about the system and the way the scientific models we've been presented, as well as basically what is happening is like a merging of, and this could have its own show, a merging of myth and what has developed in our unconscious over thousands of years to possibly, there are theories that there were humans here for millions of years. There are theories that humans are, once anything is really in time, but especially a human, the way maybe they were initially, or I would assume people can still do that now, but that they're eternal. At that point, humans could be billion years, trillion years. Oh, I kind of lost my train of thought, but that's okay. Those are little two random kind of ideas that came out from that. Something else, I guess I'll just add that I was looking at something online. It's maybe I'll plug. It's the microgrid activation Facebook group. There's a guy Doyen. He's like basically an energy healer that I've noticed, and he has a post that talks about the fascia, which is like the connective tissue, mainly around tendon joint areas, but it's actually all throughout the body. And I've seen information on this back in I actually seen years ago information where it was like a Chinese study where they were, they had videos, it was up to date, everything. They were studying the way bioemissions and tensions can actually influence water molecules in the air, and that it kind of gave like a scientific look into telepathy. So his post was about how fascia, there's really no source, but it kind of just goes along, that the fascia is capable of transmitting information, electrical information at speeds that are faster than the nervous system. So, and then there's a quote of it being basically a superconductor of energy, for the body. And so that ties together with the way consciousness or intention maybe creates a quantum effect, like spooky action at a distance. But there is a way that it all works. It is complex, but a lot of what I wrote around that goes into that, the harmonic levels, how it all comes about, the breathing, heartbeat, brainwaves that I brought up earlier from Eric's basically inspiration, how that basically, when we do that, we create an over unity, and with that over unity, it's stronger than any of the parts separately. But they have to act as, the heart basically acts as like a central organizer or unification layer through which the others maybe chime in and interact with, and it all comes together. I'll come up with more.
No, I love that. With the fascia tissue, so listeners, and Eric, you could correct me if I'm wrong. The fascia tissue is kind of like that. It's kind of like that. It's a little translucent, kind of milky white tissue. Of those of you that eat meat, it's like when you're cutting chicken, it's that kind of a white film over it. Is that right, Eric?
Well, like, that's the connective tissue. Pretty much everything in the body is fascia. It's just different elements that are a different concentration. Like bones are technically fascia, and then they take out the more of the calcium base, and it becomes more spongy and connective, like tendon, and then it adds more collagen to it, and it becomes muscle. But it's so pretty much the muscular structure that you actually have inside the body, and the skeleton structure, and the way that all connects. There's tissue that's in between all of those, and it holds everything into place. It holds all the organs in place in the body. And I've been really researching this actually quite a bit with the massage practice that I've been doing, because there is, like Og said, so much information inside these fascia tissues inside the body, and you can actually get emotional releases when you're doing body work on somebody that can literally send them into a fit of hysterical laughter, or all of a sudden you can make them incredibly angry and they'll have no clue why they're angry, or they'll start sobbing uncontrollably, and it's literally releasing the built-up information inside this fascia tissue right here. And yeah, he nailed it right on the head there.
Absolutely. Justin Deschamps, are you there, my friend?
I am.
There he is. What would you like to? You want to comment? And you guys feel free to pop on in here. You're good.
Let's see. Okay, well, I'll throw into the mix that the heart, from a physiological level, is the body's liquid crystal piezoelectric oscillator. So what that means is that your heart, when it actually pumps, it compresses on the fluid, and in that process it radiates out waves of electromagnetic energy. So that's why the heart is the strongest source of electromagnetic fields in the body. And what that does, especially when it synchronizes with your breathing, and this is why when we were doing the breathing earlier, breathing from your abdomen is so important, is when you breathe from your abdomen, it actually rolls out all of those organs and kind of allows them to get bathed in the heart's energetic field as it's beating. So every time your heart beats, it sends out this energy that radiates your whole body, and that literally entrains all of the cells and energy centers of your body. And what entrainment is synchronization. So what we'll do is, if anybody's familiar with cymatics, is it will actually start to change the behavior of the energy centers or the organ centers to match the stronger field of the heart. So this is why, if you're in really high emotional resonance, if your emotions are reflecting your thoughts, which are reflecting your actions, then you can actually start to heal your body just by being centered, calm, and still. So that exercise we were doing in the beginning, what that does is it creates this coherence between your heart and your mind, and what you focus your thoughts on is what actually generates the emotional response that gets projected from your body. So you can think of like the flow, it's a reciprocal flow. So what you observe, which is in your head, translates into emotional energy, which then surges through the heart. And what's interesting is that emotional energy is precognitive. So the thing that you're observing and the response that you get from your emotional centers actually happens in an antecedent way. It's beforehand. And this has actually been documented by HeartMath and a few other researchers who did tests to see how the body physiologically responded to random stimuli. And it noticed that the heart would actually start to respond before the image was presented on screen. So all this kind of suggests that the energy centers of the heart really is like that place where the material aspects of existence merge and transition into the metaphysical or the spiritual aspects. And that's why, as Spencer was describing, the heart is the last place where the earth elements are are associated, and then everything above that is the metaphysical or spiritual centers. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
In conjunction with a couple of things, just want to try and like weave some stuff together. The studies that have really been like widely publicized, I mean, as far as like people understand to be widely now, the heart is that primary thinking organism. When you produce the stimuli in the body, what Eric was saying with the Dantians, there truly are three separate thinking entities within the core of our being, and that's, ooh, go with your gut, or listen to your heart, or use your noggin, and it truly they all communicate with each other. And what's fun about that is when you look at the heart, it's been shown to have like, I think it's 32 emotional receptors. Now, while we think the brain is the thing that tells everything what to do, the heart is that very first thing to like jump the gun to respond, to say, hey, without the heart, nothing else works whatsoever. Without it doing its job, the brain cannot do its job. Without the heart, pumping blood, we cannot pass material. There's nothing works if the heart does not work. And so that's one of the key things in practice called Qigong and Tai Chi, which is the moving flow of the energy work. And Qigong is basically, it can be done like standing still, and like Tai Chi is more or less, moving side to side and taking steps and moving outside the center. But Qigong is more internalized because it's really, really focusing on moving all of that that energetical substance, which to me, I like to look at things from a really left brain perspective, and some people tend to have a problem with that. Everything in this spirituality, this incredible New Age movement that we have, it's very, very right brain. Ooh, I feel this, ooh, I feel that. But I feel like I'm very hard and analytical about it because, I'm just going, oh, that's just bioelectricity, and people would call me very, very cold, but I'm like, that only adds more beauty to it, to me, is the merging of both things. And Qigong is the merging of all three of those dantians, those furnaces in the body that produce the bioelectricity and keep it circulating in a healthy fashion. I have a couple of formal students that come over every now and then, and like we have a Zen garden outside, perched between two trees. Happens to be the most beautiful thing about my house. And I always walk them through some Qigong exercises before like we sit down and start talking about things, because they notice an immediate difference when they come back to that center in the heart, when they feel through mindfulness, the heartbeat emanating and pushing blood and electricity throughout every inch of their body. And that's one thing I always focus on, is telling people, feel your heartbeat. Now expand on that. Feel it in your head. Now feel it in your gut. Feel it out the rest. It's like a really good way to put yourself to sleep too, is just to lay down and be aware and follow that rhythm throughout all of you. It's you at the most beautiful core level. It is you. And so they always, even if they're not inclined into understanding anything outside the paradigm of, say, Fox News or CNN, or just, that's crude and whatever, but they always come to me afterwards just like very, like, there's this unconscious exchange between the two of us, and they just kind of like look at their hands, and they're like trying to like move their feet slowly, and they're like, what is that? Like everything is buzzing. I'm like, it's bioelectricity. You've balanced all of your channels, like just by doing everything through this mindfulness, through this moving. You've turned it up. Now go out and do something with it. Go do something for yourself, or let's have some tea and sit around and talk a mess.
I just looked at the time. Are you guys ready for... It's already been an hour. How is this happening? Would you fellas like a break, or you want to keep going a little bit more and then take a break? Up to you.
I just want to say something before
Go for it, Og. You go. Yes.
Justin, I think, said... Well, I think it was Eric at first that compared the body, the mind system, to a Tesla coil, and Justin just mentioned it being a piezoelectric oscillator. And I was just going to talk about Qigong, Spencer. So it's funny, everybody's like, I don't know, we all have a lot of similar ideas. But if that's, the piezoelectric oscillator, and then it radiates waves out, that means that it's radiant energy, which is, related to radiant energy devices that were developed fairly recently, but seem to have, there's markings on the walls that look like radiant energy devices, and as if the cymatics somebody mentioned, those patterns and how that all connects, it seems to be the knowledge been here since the beginning. But if that's how it is compared, the intention is the pressure, the catalyst, the charge to produce an effect. And naturally, I guess our intention goes mainly where our focus naturally gathers, or by default, if you will. But that's where those exercises come in, where it will literally just be motions. There's, hard and soft versions, and it's about balance, but yoga even corresponds with that, where it's physical motions combined with intention, combined with the mind pattern or exercise within. And that's gathering the ability to produce that intention, to utilize willpower and motivate it in the body or move it around. Just as like the more refined spiritual force to, with a body that's all the way down to a physical density and moves upward towards the what we call the heart energy, or awareness through a type of over unity, or you can, emotion doesn't really do it, but it kind of works, an emotional field. And so that's really, it's kind of right in front of our faces, that nobody really combines the knowledge from cultures, but if you look and you see how everything kind of does add up to that is, and then the exercises and the way you, Spencer, described them, it's all very apparent. I guess I just wanted to mention that real quick. There's so much more, because with it being something that generates radiant energy, the possibilities and the way that interacts with the universe and the effect that produces, especially being tied directly to our intention, it could only, I don't want to use the word limitless, but it opens up a level of learning how we interact with the universe that isn't really apparent or capable without acknowledging that intention function as basically a spiritual effect, where you could say you intend to use your arm to pick up a glass, but what is it if you are not moving physically and intending to hold a certain level of attention or awareness or emotion or whatever it is in your body? I mean, it's in your body and your mind. At that point, nothing physically is happening, and you can't really go to somebody. You can grab their arm, if you wanted to be rude, and make them, or, force them to pick up a glass, but you can't go to somebody and tell them, go within and think of this or feel at this level. There are ways to be really rude mentally, and that goes into a lot of the background with bases and things like the underground bases, and it's everybody's background, because we're all facing this oppression on the emotional and mental fields. But and that's just ways of using effects and the autonomy of basically a fragile ego, in the way the world kind of, if we base our ego on the world and society, which is by default what happens, it's a way of using that against an individual to get into their mind. But ultimately, the mind is what you could call, or what I call, non-local to the physical realm or the body. And so it's something we alone have control over, and it's kind of like the pinnacle of reaching physical harmony or health or balance, because that is the first, if you will, and the last level where it is going to be tied together. If there is a problem, it most likely started there, and if there is a problem there, it will end up having an effect on the body. The other thing I want, and with that idea, how that interplays between each other, it's almost like a projection system where they're feeding back off each other to create whatever experience or level of health or level of awareness that is going to be there in it. There's usually 3 variables that are brought up to describe this, which whatever pattern that one wants to use the terms, the words, but something like emotions, mentality, or mind, and body consciousness, biology, and physicality. There's plenty of metaphors that go along. The last thing I wanted to say real quick is that I'm not sure who was talking about it, but how I think Eric talked about the heart being related to DNA, and I wanted to talk about that earlier too, how it's the restrictions in trauma. A lot of it can go, it literally so refined. To put it this way, if a person is past the regular trauma, well, technically in the way that trauma would be, at least for me, a lot of people don't want to think that, say everyone has the same trauma as somebody who's been in a very, mind-controlling experience. But the basis for the way our minds work in this society is basically a form of traumatization or hypnosis. Why am I losing my place here?
That's okay. Take your time. We're in no rush.
He talked about the DNA, and so when we get past the in this life, this memory, the conscious memory in the brain, actual memory traumatization, and or just implants and programming, not like etheric implants or operations, but that might even, the thing with that, people talk about, I'm a little rambling, I'm going to bring it all back. People talk about implants and things like that, but they were talking about this for thousands of years, about implants in the brain and surgeries and all these methods. It comes down to a weird kind of conspiracy/control system. But the idea with that is, if we get past all that current trauma, then there would be what's kept in the genetic memory, what would be carried, we basically are carrying from our parents in each generation down the line through the DNA, depending on how they interacted with the universe, if you will. So there's like that connection to various levels. The last thing I wanted to say before I got a little distracted there is that, because he talked about there's a vortex being within, I'm not sure who, it might have been Justin too, I think it was, there is a vortex, because I have a little written down notes. Ultimately, there's a body of information about what is called fractal implosion. Dan Winter talks about this a lot. He isn't necessarily the first individual to talk about it. I mean, again, you can look at that, and it's written on the walls and caves from thousands of years ago. But the process of, and the meaning behind basically a fractal collapse of a wave is that it's geometrically proportioned. The patterns, however the wave is going to be defined, the pulse or the oscillations, the pattern is geometrically synchronized and proportional so that you can squeeze it kind of like a buckyball, or I think that's what they're called. And it will collapse in itself, and each geometry will fit into almost like a spiral that can condense infinitely down and infinitely out. The idea is that can expand, and it basically opens up a pathway for a type of expansion where that pattern then can fit into a larger pattern or set of patterns. And I'll have to go off into a tangent to describe why moving between layers, basically it comes down to harmonics, that the patterns of each chakra system, if you want to call it that, they interact with each other to create they interact as one system, so they create a over unity, a harmony, a harmonic overall. Then each one is comprised of those. The heart itself, when our energy is contained within that, there's basically a whole school of thought and knowledge behind it, even what he calls I think it was the art of successful death, where basically we can unify our entire energy, our entire awareness into a fractal, self-similar, symmetrical, geometrically proportioned pattern which can basically travel, and it doesn't travel by moving, it travels by expanding its pattern or its energy, its alignment into larger and smaller layers, or if it's basically it's literally like a fractal or a kaleidoscope, or one of those fractal zooms. I can't think of the Talabot. I can't think of the name. But that's basically the idea behind that, is that the heart opens into a portal. It has all this temporal, basically beyond time. It sees what's going to happen beforehand. There are studies, I think Eric mentioned that as well. And so that allows one to contain their consciousness in a state that can transcend time and space. It's basically a portal which, when operated, acts as a function to transfer consciousness, our maybe not our identity, but our awareness. I would call it the soul level, or our soul, successfully into a kind of beyond time and space environment, which people will call eternity or something like that. Right. I'm not really putting the words together too beautifully, elegantly here, but that's the basic idea.
Oh, that's okay. You did just fine, Og. And I understand about eloquently. I don't always do it myself. Eric, Spence, Justin, do you want to comment on?
Yeah, actually, it's really interesting the way I keep on hearing about the Trinity construct, because we've got the mind, we've got the body and the spirit, we've got the belly brain, we've got the feel with your heart, think with your head, and it's really interesting because when you actually keep these into balance, and this is going off of what we were talking about with earlier with the balance as well, when you keep these constructs in balance with each other, they literally start teaching the other one how to hit the next level. So say, for instance, if all we're doing is we're just staying inside the head, we're not going into the mind, or we're not going into the spirit, and we're not going into the body, and all you're doing is training the mind, you end up with one of these hardcore analytical, I have to see it to believe it, like Stephen Hawking type, very incredibly smart, book smart, but there's no understanding on a deeper level behind that. If all you're doing is training the spirit, you end up as like one of these Sadhgurus on the side of the road in India who survives off of charity from people, handing him food as he's sitting there exploring the internal universe, his whole entire life as the body decays around him. If you end up doing nothing but training the body, you end up as like, one of these real superficial like bodybuilder types or supermodel types, or like one of these people from the UFC who beat the living crap out of each other for nothing more than superiority and money, and it's really interesting because when you bring everything into balance and you have the mind, the body, and the spirit construct, you can train in the body and it'll teach you what to do in the spirit, and that'll teach you what to do in the mind, and that'll teach you what to do in the body, and it's a never-ending spiral pathway upwards. And that's exactly what Og was talking about with that vortex portal right there, because it literally leads you to a space where time and space means absolutely nothing. Mm-hmm. You transcend all of that. And, you look back in history with, like, the major religious fundamental teachers, like we've got Gautama Buddha, we've got Muhammad, we've got Jesus, and you look at these guys, and every single last one of them had a period of 35 to 40 days where they disappeared out into the wilderness or sat inside a cave or sat underneath a tree. And this is what they were doing, is they were activating the mind, body, spirit construct. And they literally tapped into that timeless space to where they could pull cosmic law back out. And then they were able to emanate that energy, and they literally started a doctrine that changed the world. Now, granted, a lot of it's been hijacked since to use for control purposes, but these people were real, and they did stuff like this, and this is the way that they did it right here. And this is what is actually happening right now with like these incoming frequencies on the planet. You're finding people instinctively being gravitated toward this, and it's just really interesting to see all these points of view and how they all keep circling around the same exact core focus. And we have all got our own focus from a different perspective. Our own life experiences led us to a different line of thinking and whatnot, but we're all focused right directly at the same exact core issues. And it's a beautiful thing to see. It's fascinating the way the tapestry is like it's made up. It's really, really cool. I'm enjoying this a lot.
Oh, absolutely beautiful. And I'll tell you what, we do have some questions coming in. I think we're going to pause here. And Timothy, thank you for your question in the live chat. We will get to that after the break. Fellas, I think we'll take a 5-minute break. Does that sound good to you?
Sounds good.
And because I think we're just getting warmed up. And again, and I want to let you know too, we got no time constraints. I don't want you feeling rushed. You take your time to answer, and that goes for everybody tonight, okay? Because guess what?
Groupie.
I love each one of you, and I love all of you listeners too. And folks, if you're just tuning in, who are we talking to? Let me tell you, the topic is heart chakra. We're talking to Og Tellez, Spencer Eskridge, Eric Rains, Justin Deschamps. I'm your host, Yvonne Palermo. During the break, if you want to take a peek at the www Full Disclosure Now website, please do. It's www.fulldisclosurenow.com. If you'd like to check out Og's fantastic blog, it's Og Tellez, AUGTELLEZ.wordpress.com. Spencer has a fantastic YouTube channel under Spencer Eskridge. Eric Rains, UnleashingNaturalHumanity.com. Justin Deschamps, boom, stillnessinthestorm.com. All right, folks, we're going to take a beautiful 5-minute break, and the music that I'm going to play is titled Anahata, and Spence gave this to me yesterday. It's absolutely beautiful, my friends. So go get yourselves a cup of hot cocoa or maybe a cup of tea, and we'll see you in 5 minutes. All right. Welcome back, folks. I hope you all had a fantastic break. Again, if you're just tuning in, my name is Yvonne Palermo, aka the Groovy Bean. Reminder to you folks this evening, if you have questions for our panel, we are talking about the heart chakra. If we have time at the end for other questions, maybe we will take them. But do put your questions in capital letters. We will get to those. We're talking to Og Telez, Spencer Eskridge, Eric Rains, Justin Deschamps. I do want to remind folks that this is a donation station. The sheep don't sleep. So if you like what you hear and you want more of it, show some of that Babylonian love dovies. We do have donate links at www.fulldisclosurenow.com. And go to the host page. So show some of that love. Yes. Now, I'm going to welcome back, fellas. Are you there? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
There they are.
Yep.
Come on. There they are. Oh, it's Friday night. I want to hear more pep than that. Are you guys there? All
Most
right.
certainly.
Woohoo! There we go. Come on, fellas. That's right. Now, let's see here. Timothy has a question, and I'm going to direct it at all of you. Timothy has heard negative entities cannot attach to the heart chakra. Is that true? Who would like to lead that question?
Oh, that is completely and totally false. That's one of the biggest ones I see wrapped around people is it's actual construct that wraps around the heart like a snake 3 or 4 times, then it goes all the way down the left arm into the hand, so it's easy transmission by contact. You can touch somebody and get something from them, or you can touch somebody and give something to them. That is absolutely false.
It's one of, like, I feel the most susceptible things to get attached to, because, like, we as a conscious entity, as a species, we're still, like, moving back into our heart space. So lots of people, I feel, really embody that level of attachment, because the heart is so neglected more often than not, and the people that I've met and things of that nature. So that's, I could not agree more with Eric. Bananas. Baloney.
Bananas.
Bananas. Justin? You want to say anything?
Yeah, totally agree with my esteemed colleagues here, and I'll add that trauma, if we define trauma as the willful act to turn away from experience or to try to reject experience, so it's almost like you're having an experience and it's so intense that a part of you tries to pull away from that in a protective mechanism. Well, that creates a divergence as far as the data stream that you're receiving. So if you're experiencing trauma, you're going to recede into yourself to try to hide from the experience, and then that's going to leave a blockage. And if the heart chakra is that energy center that opens up when you're in a place of acceptance or love, which is the reverse of trauma, then you're going to be able to undo trauma through opening up your heart space. So what I'm getting at is that if we've experienced trauma in our lives, if we have experiences that are so intense that we recede into ourselves as a defense mechanism, then that's going to leave spaces of discontinuity on the heart where other entities can come in and feed off of that discordant energy. So yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
Og, do you want to comment?
I like to think all the options or variables, and so imagine, because I kind of agree with everyone, and maybe you could. It starts with saying maybe, okay, well then somebody who is fully balanced all the way up to the heart level, and basically a term that gets thrown around a lot is like sovereign, and so basically somebody who's self-realized and capable of, because if you can see on this level, then you can see interference and influence, just like if somebody tried to put a sticker on you or something, your physical body. And so imagine then maybe even one of those gurus who devoted their lives to a spiritual path, and they don't care about anything. Somebody who you put something in their bowl and they eat it, and that's just how it works. You could say maybe if they're doing that right, they're impervious to what, honestly, a lot of Americans, a lot of modern day people with the technology around us all the time, we kind of all are bathed in it, but more so the intentions and the way that ties into everything. They seem to be very vulnerable to these influences, from whatever source they they are actually, whether it's, parasites or just frequency disturbances in the biology. But so basically, there could be a possibility where you could get to a level and the heart is impervious, but yeah, then I keep dropping out. But I mean, that's basically what I want to say. There was just another piece to it that kind of tied in.
Yeah. Well,
you can continue there.
It'll come back. So during the break, we started talking a little bit. I was asking about, because I had this visual of how the heart, you have energy coming out of your heart, and that's the sound mine makes. It goes, but then you have the torus, your crown, and I was thinking that they're two different energies. And then Justin, we were talking about how how they're stacked and how one affects the other. Do you wanna talk a little bit more on that?
Yeah, I'll just throw this real quick out there. One concept that I learned from the Law of One, which seems to be confirmed in my life experience, is that your consciousness is what will be activated or channeled through your energy center. So, for example, if you fear something in the world, like you're about to go on a date, or it's your first day of school, or you're on tryouts for something, you're going to kind of feel butterflies in your stomach. And the energy regions in between there, that's where that's focusing, is the sacral, which is representative of your personal growth and development, and your solar plexus, which is representative of your relationship to the world. And this is within the Law of One description. Your heart space is that energy center where you actually are in acceptance and in love and appreciating your experience. So we were discussing is how energy can get blocked and how this is a dynamic expression. And what I mean by that is that at any given moment of your life, depending on what you're thinking and feeling and responding to, you're going to feel different sensations in your energy centers. And one of the ways to tell if you're blocked is to kind of feel, where is the energy located? And so to just try to pay attention to what's happening on a daily basis is just to feel your own body and to feel where the energy is flowing in. So I know for myself, I can tell when I'm out of balance because I feel like there's this buildup of energy right in my solar plexus, and it's almost like I need to release the energy. And when I take a moment to get still and really just calm my thoughts, just like we did in the beginning with doing some mindfulness meditation or something like this, I'll actually feel that energy release, and it'll move from the solar plexus up through my heart chakra. And depending on what I'm actually visualizing or focusing on, it'll actually start to tingle my third eye. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I know we were discussing that. And I'll also say that as far as the way that the energy centers can be activated, it's like a switch where the bottom one has to be flipped on before the top one can be flipped on. It's not a black and white thing, in my understanding. When you're experiencing different things, depending on how you have defined your experience in relation to the world, the energy is going to flow in different areas, because ultimately it's your consciousness and your free will choices that provide channels for that energy to flow and guide through. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Anybody want to comment to what Justin said?
I think that was an amazing description of how to actually release blocked up energy, because these sensations that we feel like when we're moving energy around inside the body, they can eventually develop to the point to where it feels like you're plugging into a light socket or something like that. But when you're starting off on this pathway, you got to recognize that these energy symptoms are very, very subtle. These are very minute sensations that we're having to deal with, and actually recognize this is energy, this is chi flowing through the body. And, by focusing on the energetic center, just like Justin was saying, like the feeling of butterflies in the stomach or the tingling inside the body, that's what you really want to go looking for. If you want to understand if you're blocked or not, first look at how you're interacting with the world around you, whether that be physically, emotionally, mentally, or, spiritually. and see where you're not operating up to snuff on what you think you should be operating on, and then go and try to find the area inside the body that corresponds with that. Like when you're thinking about this and when you're feeling that specific way, what do you feel inside the body at the same time? Because we are a mind, a body, and a spirit. And so when you can actually correlate the sensations in the body with the emotional impulses, with the mental impulses, that's when you can really start figuring out where the actual physical blockage is. Well, energetic blockage is physically inside the body. And then you have a spot that you can focus your intuition at, you can focus your awareness, you can focus your consciousness at, and then by visualizing the flow, by breathing, by moving with the qigong or qigong, you actually can start to dislodge this blockage here. And so you don't have to be on par with people who are doing these etheric removals like I am and the other people out there. You don't have to be on par with us. You just have to be able to feel what's happening inside the body, because if you can feel where the energy doesn't flow, you can recognize where the blockage is at and you can move it out. And by moving these things around, you eventually get to the point to where you do become on par with us. You start seeing these things. And instead of having to, blindly walk around inside the room with the light off and a blindfold on and stumbling over stuff, you can actually turn on the light internally and project it outwards, and then you can start to see it. So it's all about starting the actual pathway of figuring out what's going on inside of you, what's blocked up, and fixing it yourself. You've got to start becoming your own guru, your own doctor, follow your own intuition and start trusting it. And you can literally turn on these abilities to the point to where you become able to see these constructs. You can feel the energy very clearly. You can see the energy very clearly. And you can start activating the energetic centers in your body that do really, really cool stuff. We are created in God's image, and we can do a lot of really cool stuff. The body has a lot of inherently amazing abilities and powers inside of it, and all we have to do is start figuring out where the energy is not connected, where it's not flowing through. And Justin really pointed out a great way how to do that.
Thank you. And we have a comment here from Timothy. And thank you, Timothy. A phenomena that Timothy has experienced since his awakening 6 years ago was that when he focuses on his heart and breathing, he gets this feeling in his heart. It's hard to describe in words, but it feels like something opens up and there is energy building up. Is this opening up the chakra or an indication of a blockage?
It depends on if it's comfortable or not. If you have something that it starts to build up pressure, you start feeling stabbing sensations, like prickly feelings, like there's something that's sharp that's like kind of sliding, that's usually indicative of a blockage. But if you feel like it's relaxing into warmness and you feel the center opening up with like a radiant pressure that's starting to expand from your heart space, you're definitely opening up the energetic center right there. So you hear a lot of things about like ascension symptoms and things like that, and people will talk about how restless they've been or how bad that headache was or how much their body aches and stuff like that. And that is not ascension symptoms right there. What that is that's energetic parasite constructs. That's blockages, emotional or mental or physical, inside the body, that with the increase in frequencies and the activation of the DNA and the flow that's happening inside everybody, it's getting dislodged, and it literally hurts. They're very physical in nature. They operate, just outside of the 3D reality. It's just far enough outside of the electromagnetic spectrum for us not to be able to see it, but close enough to interact directly inside the body. And so if it's comfortable and it feels good, you're definitely doing something that's akin to opening and activating. But when you're feeling pressure or pain or anything that's uncomfortable, that's definitely indicative of a blockage. And those are really easy to get out. You have to, like I showed with the meditation earlier in the beginning, how you can breathe energy into your body. You breathe directly into that spot. You wrap it up in light. You pull it out of your body. You can literally take your etheric hands, and like Og was talking about, not physically going and grabbing somebody, but having the intention to go and grab somebody, or having the intention to go feel this way. And you can move your energetic body in that fashion, and you can pull these things out, and you can, just make connections to source consciousness and just kind of flush everything out, bring down vacuums that you can put any type of a blockage in, and then they go for restructure so that they're gone, and it's something that people are probably going to be running into a lot more here in the upcoming months and years, with these activations that are happening. And it's always good to know what you can do about it, because once, like Justin was saying, we get into a space of stillness and mindfulness, we can literally start healing the body. We are an amazing biological construct that operates on consciousness, and these are the abilities that we're starting to wake up and recognize, that we can literally sit there and heal ourselves just by thinking about it. So
absolutely. Wow, beautifully said. Would anybody care to comment with Eric's statement?
If I could elaborate,
Please.
just had just a couple things cross my mind. In regards to like identifying blockages and things of that nature, when looking outside yourself as well as like coupled along, just going internally, trying to identify things. Like clear indicators to me is when I see like people interact and like how somebody is treating me as opposed to how I'm treating them. What I pick up on immediately is like what unsettles me about this situation, what unsettles me about this exchange I'm witnessing, and whether it's like an emotional thing, or there's like a lack of passion in the relationship, or there's a miscommunication constantly. I see things like that, and that's just mindfulness to me, especially if it's like between me and another person. I go, okay, that's a problem I'm having internally, and that's something I can then identify outside of myself to work on internally. So there's all these lenses, all these means of identifying things, whether it's physical inside of your being or outside between people, the unspoken understanding between things. So just there's I don't know, it's one of those boundless things that we happen to embody.
Oh, that's beautiful. Og, do you want to comment? Maybe not. No? You okay?
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, me too. So I was looking up, with the heart chakra, you're concerned about love and care. Would it be empathy, gratitude, right? Affection, compassion. So I'm curious with you fellas, how do you show yourself love and compassion?
Through action, truly, being present as much as humanly possible. Whether it's expressing that with somebody you share camaraderie with, or somebody that you truly love, that you share heart space with, and the thing about just compassion and love in general is that it's so elusive to so many people. And I have one student who came to me like really humbly and was just like, I teach me what's going on in your head. I'm like, I promise, like, you're more of a teacher than I could ever be. But even without her telling me, there was a trauma that had happened in one of her past relationships. I could see that there was something like fundamentally wrong in the respect that she was so just genuine and giving and loving with people, but when it was time to receive that back, she was very, very hesitant. And like just watching that unspoken thing happen between people, I could easily tell, like, there's a one-way street that's supposed to be flowing both ways. So in regards to just the power of compassion, you never know what a stranger will be 5 hours down the road. I just think, if we approach people as candidly as possible, without having to put on any sort of front or filter, and in a respectful regard, you don't just walk up to somebody on the street and it's like, would you like to hear about our Lord and Savior, the Vedic chakra system? But if you just let things happen organically, and if things aren't forced, the compassion and the wordless bond between people that forms over time. It's impossibly strong, to the point that if you take it to a physical level, the heart, like we were all discussing earlier, the heart is its own separate thinking entity, and we have every fiber of it, because all it is just it's comprised of these fibers, and the way our brain folds through memories and neurological stimulation, the heart builds these fibers as well. So when they talk about like the breaking of a heart, like when your heart breaks, there really is a physical thing going on there, and the fibers are built over time and through exchanges with people and what you do for yourself. And you see all of these old couples that have been married like 60, 75 years, like just dying right after the other.
Right.
For the sheer fact that when one of them goes, the heart literally breaks. The heart cannot take it. And so all of the memory associated with that bond, the body cannot continue on. And it's a testament to the power of love, this unfathomable thing for so long. It's truly simple, and it's hard because we have it shoved in our face in all these different forms, saying, oh, love is this, love is that. No, love is, and that's about it. If you just let things happen organically, what is not love will sort itself out. And yeah,
that's beautiful. Through the authenticity from within yourself, and it just the power that comes out. Absolutely beautiful. Love that. How do you show yourself love and compassion?
I was actually thinking about this the other day. There's a lot of restrictions we can put on ourselves and judgment we can pass on ourselves and others. Some of it may be relevant, but it ultimately still stands that if we, even if we're, trying to help people in the world by experiencing that type of judgment, if you will, even if we're avoiding what we're judging, for ourselves, as best as we can perceive it, that type of, basically the outlook and the way we interact with others will still suffer from what we see in others, is what I'm trying to say, through that type of restriction. Ultimately, it's about respect and self-respect. And there's all types of fancy stuff we can do with essential oils and incense and the elements, good food and stuff like that, like healthy for the body, basically treating the body right. There's a few people talking about, it's always been discussed this way, but there's just people I'm listening to I've seen recently that talk about, even this comes down to what we're talking about here with the heart, that we're not the material self. We may inhabit that, or even interface with it, or maybe even have the opportunity to eternally interface in a different way. But we're at least comprised of the material, as well as what the focus here is the immaterial self. That's the self of the intention. You can even say the intentional body or intention body, the emotional bodies and the mental body, and gosh, I keep losing my pace here. But I literally just lost my pace.
Oh, that's okay.
I've actually done that a few times in the past years, and I have a lot of stuff written down. I'll just go back to this. The main thing is that it was about self-respect and all that. That's kind of like maybe a boring concept for me. We can basically we just have to respect ourselves and balance our levels, and ultimately it becomes a journey of knowledge. We're learning about the true self. We will. That's where what I was talking about with trauma and how we're kind of with even certain theories where we are in physicality because there is some type of containment over our basically the veils, our spiritual energy, that by definition, a spiritual being coming into this time matrix or this plane, this perspective, is in a way sacrificing a lot of knowledge or awareness of the self. It's a really weird process. Ultimately, that can kind of be interchangeable with a kind of default trauma, if you will, that's not necessarily related to programming and the particular manipulation of thoughts in the society, but is related to the way the conscious mind, it is related to the way the function of the self, the identity, the organ system, including the brain, and the energy or the immaterial self in the body. The way, and then when you break down into that, where when you break it down, the knowledge or the information or whatever we're looking at, ultimately, I'm losing my pace again. Where I was heading is the heart tends to function, if you will, as a connection or center point between the material, the physical body, and the immaterial or energetic selves. And through that harmonization process that we all mentioned, there seems to be a generation of what we would call self-awareness. And I remember I was talking about just the function of it is basically a kind of a paradox, or you could call it maybe even a holographic projection system. The tertiary or trinary ideas of mind, body, and emotion. Of course, I'm not going to be able to remember the hundreds of other trifold metaphors that reflect emotions, thoughts, and or emotions, feelings, and actions is a good one, because each one that it shows directly how each one reflects into the other, and maybe you could say there's a initial point from the emotions into thoughts or feelings into the actions, and then at that point, if our actions are reflecting disharmony in that system, that will bleed back into the emotions and the feelings, and so we have this feedback system. But the idea is the three function separately, but as one. There's an interesting little notion somebody brought up. It was how, I can't remember how it started, but the way the heart connects the duality of the conscious and the unconscious or subconscious mind. I think unconscious is the proper terminology. The way it connects is it's basically a paradox. I'm losing my place again, but
it's okay. It's okay.
Oh, okay. So it was when Spencer was talking about it. I have it written at the bottom here. How the heart relates to the air. The air is not seen. You can see, air, tornado, whatever, but it is felt. It is felt on the surface. It is intuited. We deduce whether there's air there, as well as we directly feel it. That is an analogy, a metaphor for the heart, the way that what role the heart plays in our consciousness or our overall awareness, the function, and it relates directly to self-awareness. It's like a feedback device. And so then there's a physical connection I made, correlation maybe, how, and this aspect of the idea, the description relates to how there's a connection between the conscious and the unconscious mind, how they are reflexive of each other, and the conscious is always partial, it's always cycling through one of those functions, but it has to be that way, otherwise the unconscious cannot have a means of physically expressing itself. There's no self to begin with if we do not have the artificial, temporary linear conscious view of the self through the physical body, the neurochemistry. And the heart in that way is a union between that neurochemistry and the immaterial bodies. But the analogy was that in the same, because the conscious mind comes down to the Trinity and how there's kind of a duality between the conscious and unconscious, and the consciousness files through a trinary pattern of which self, if you will, is in control at any given time. And we all cycle through this. Somebody was like naming off professions of I think it was Eric the bodybuilder, I think the yogi, the spiritualist, and the linear logical thinker. We kind of have played one of those roles. We've played all of them at various levels in our life, at various situations. Balancing that is the idea. But in that, the weird physical analogy is that the heart, if the blood related to what we said before, is as well as the piezoelectric effect of the organs and the energy system. Well, the blood is the same. It's an added property. Maybe it contains some aspect of what generates a liquid crystalline property, just like a magnetosphere or something. And but the heart, through that, emits the source, emits the pulse wave, the generation of that energy that will influence the body. It influences other hearts. It influences our own biology, our own bioemissions. They harmonize and they sync. And in the same sense, the energy of the heart, that vortex, that fractal spiral that I mentioned, and I think it was Eric, it might have been Justin, that talked about how the heart squeezing blood in the way when it works properly, it actually creates a vortex of this, conductive spiritual fluid. It starts in the heart, but then it is, with each pump, it is simultaneously felt at every single point all throughout the body all at once. And so I just had this kind of odd flow of ideas there, how it all kind of connects together. But the main thing I kind of want to leave here with is the idea that there's a connection between all of this and the conscious mind and the unconscious, and how there's a kind of maybe a holographic projection system where the conscious mind must be temporally limited in the sense of maintaining a linear awareness or acknowledgement of the physical plane. Without that, there's no reason, basically, which it also may be illusory that there is that, but the idea is with the unconscious is aware of all times and spaces, and that kind of sounds fantastical, but it maps out if you look at all the corners of the picture. Ultimately, the way, for instance, we mentioned earlier how the heart senses before the other organs and even the brain. They would show people pictures in a few, I think, university studies, and when they were shocking or it affected the heart layer, there would be a spike right before they did it. Once there was a pattern developed, but not. It was made sure that wasn't a pattern that they could calculate. It was literally just them doing it. So there's information being transferred there, and at that point, it might not be them seeing from the bioemissions of that person's mind or heart that they're about to do it, but the heart sensing what the individual, what ourself is going to experience in time. And so it's kind of like a theory that I'm trying to tie it all together, that the heart connects with that unconscious. It's kind of like a pathway from, maybe you could call the higher spiritual knowledge, the divine, or the true knowledge of the self across the boundaries of space and time, where there is a larger version of many versions of all of what we are, what is happening. Same look, same feel, but it's just, you would call them different parallel universes. In that theory, the soul extends across all of them, whereas the physical body and the particular consciousness that develops is unique to each one. But when that consciousness, that linear perception, becomes harmonized with the level of awareness of the unconscious, and the unconscious is a bad word for it, but psychology kind of stamped it there. It's more of super consciousness or over unity consciousness. That's the love. That's the just the pure emotional wisdom. If love is kind of a too high of a idea, that's what Yvonne was you were talking about. Those are that's the idea behind that. But ultimately, through this resonation, through learning from it, basically through seeing the feedback and responding to it and learning, we connect with what is a big expanse field of energy that we call the soul, that appears to us to be, light in and around the body and the mind, and from a larger picture extends all the way across layers and upon layers of basically, in theory, parallel universes or physical versions of this body, and it contains the information of all of them. The heart is how a mind would be able to integrate that information from a linear, logical perspective. It is the transcendence of that linear binary duality perspective, which only requires mind, and the observation of the mind towards that emotional level that allows for that information transfer through and beyond personal memory and genetic memory, and then across what we would perceive as space and time boundaries. And that's basically the idea. My memory even trailed off right there. I've wrote a bunch of stuff down. It goes into, even there with that, I'm not going to keep going, but it goes into metagenetics and how it is found that certain genetics with certain individuals, they adapt both biologically and mentally and emotionally to, strangely enough, what would indicate a higher readiness to produce this effect, to produce the bioemissions of love or unity consciousness, to resist what was mentioned as a parasitical interference, implants, frequency entanglements, and even like a virus. If you got to think if a brain can be compared in a way to so it can't be compared to a computer system. Even the people that developed computer systems to act like brains admit that the brain cannot be compared fully to a computer system because that's not how it works. But if it could be, you imagine that, well, a laptop can get a virus, it can function that way. So at the very least, if somebody's developed enough to configure frequency patterns that can be put out into the world, that would produce disharmony in what would otherwise be a harmonious overunity in selves and selves to each other. That would essentially be like a virus on a system, but it would all be frequencies at that point. There doesn't have to be any processors or anything. It's literally just kind of like how Eric mentioned how a certain type of parasite he has knowledge of could infect others through the hands. And so at the very least there's that, which kind of trailed off there into that. It is in a way important to know that.
I love this. Is wonderful. Oh my goodness. And just to let you know, Og, I'm watching the chat here. The chat is going great. And I want to give a shout out to Trish. This is what Trish said, Og. So based on what Og said, the heart is connected to our subconsciousness, which is connected to the divine, the all-knowing. Therefore, before making any decision, we should always check with our heart to make sure we are not making the choice with our mind only, which is limited.
Mm-hmm.
How beautiful.
It's kind of like a maxim, but that goes back to how the heart is the first to form biologically, and as well, it seems to be if the heart has an effect, or if there's an effect done there, it radiates outward to all the other parts. So with that in mind, if we do check the heart, then it can't lead basically the heart cannot lie. It can't be configured to lead us astray. We mentally, and this is where it kind of ties together, I don't want to go on too long here, but mentally we can turn away from that. Like I think Eric said, it might have been Justin, but from trauma. Trauma is essentially, the base level, it's turning away from the experience and going, no, I don't want to experience this, which is not the default of experience here. Energy goes in, it gets cycled, and we express it. We don't, stop the process that doesn't really exist in nature if you think about it. It does, but it's not in the way that it can occur if somebody completely, produces disharmony in that nature.
Gotcha.
I keep forgetting where I was going, but yeah.
It's okay. You're doing fantastic. And listen, I want to let the listeners know we're going overtime here. Fellas, you're good, right? Justin, you're good? Everybody?
Yep.
See.
Yeah, drink coffee.
No, it's good, man. Okay, cool. Because this is great. And I think, we're warmed up now. We're going good. Before I move on to some of the questions in the chat, fellas, do you want to comment on what Og just said?
I think it was awesome. It was a lot of really good information there. A lot of really good information. It ties in a lot.
Ads.
Can we just all officially just say amaze balls? Let's just go there. Do it.
Amaze balls. Yes.
1, 2, 3. Amaze.
Amaze balls.
Amaze balls.
Wonderful. Okay, I'm going to, and there's a lot of comments in the chat about the cloning. Everybody wants to hear about the cloning, but I think it's also, I wanted you all to, everybody needs to know too that besides that story, we also have to tune into the importance of our chakras, and it was very important, I feel, and for Og and Spence and Justin and Eric to talk about this. So we always have time for that. But listen, I have a question in the chat. It's not necessarily a heart chakra directed question. However, I want to ask it. It's from Trish because I'm sure there's many listeners out there, and it's it can be a traumatic experience, and it's something we need to talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and ask it. Trish has been getting violently attacked in the astral by entities on a regular basis. She fights back, but will feel like her physical body is actually being affected and forces herself awake. She wakes paralyzed. One time she saw grays in her room while paralyzed, but once she could move, they were gone. Is this because the walls between dimensions are thinner? Why me, and how can I stop this? And again, the reason why I'm asking this is because when someone is upset or in distress, I definitely, we should help one another. So Anyone want to take that?
Yeah, I could definitely field that one there.
Okay.
So one of the easiest ways that you can protect yourself is to surround yourself in golden light. I've actually got a meditation on my YouTube channel. It's called the Implant Protection and Extraction Protocols, and it'll teach you how I actually protect myself and I remove entities and parasites from the human body. And you can actually learn how to do that yourself. But in it is a meditation and where you start turning on golden points of light inside your body, and you end up armoring yourself in gold light. And then you, from the very center of the heart space that we're talking about tonight, you turn on another gold light and you push that out to surround yourself in a golden egg. That right there is one of the easiest ways you can protect yourself. And it's a really easy meditation once you get the hang of it. In the beginning, you kind of have to listen to it a couple times until you get, the basics of it. But it's a foundation, it's a foot in the door to recognize that we have this Christ consciousness energy inside of us that we can actually use to protect ourselves. And that right there, once you start doing that, you'll actually get like intuitive hits on what you do. And it's kind of like a basic how-to, and then you kind of go on your own from there and you figure out what ways work more importantly or more strongly for you specifically. But when you're being attacked in the astral, other than putting this up right here, one of the most important things that you're going to want to do is recognize that they need you. You are the reason that they are there. They are literally eating your life force energy. They are taking that fear. They are taking that anger, that hate, and it's Christ consciousness energy that's perverted dark so that they can actually imbibe it and use it. And so what you want to do is you want to step directly into the heart space and come from a place of love and compassion. You don't want to be scared. You want to step right into the fear and you want to smile and walk right through it. And really just sit in a place of love and understanding. And because, they're as programmed as, some of the worst stuff that you could see out there. There is so much fear, so much terror in their everyday existence because they're literally watching their food source recognize that they're there and cutting them off. And they're going absolutely batshit crazy in the background because of this. And so what you're going to want to do is really just step outside of that construct and put yourself in a calm state of mind and recognize that, listen, I am in control of this. This is my reality. This is who I am. And what's mine is mine, and what's yours is yours. And I am going to sit over here away from your energy. I'm going to separate myself out from it. I am going to show you love. I am going to show you compassion because you're not going to be doing this anymore. And you need to come back to source. You need to come back to the divine. Otherwise, you're going for restructure, And so by stepping outside of these fear paradigms and doing that, it's one of the easiest ways to cut yourself off from this. Another really important thing that you can do is because astral parasites usually need fertile ground to kind of sink their claws into you, I guess you could say metaphorically. And fertile ground, by that I mean is trauma that you haven't healed, patterns that don't serve you. If you walk around just angry at the world, angry at the situation, angry that you're here in this meat suit incarnated onto this planet, that's fertile ground for these things to hook into you. And so when you start going internally and doing the shadow work and finding the aspects and areas of yourself that does not serve you and does not hold up to the blueprint of the perfect person that you want to be, you go in and you start transmuting these weaknesses into strength, and they start losing the ability to even find you on the astral. So, I mean, it's a multi-tiered process of clearing yourself out. Honestly, if you don't know how to go about doing any of that, I'm here. You can always book a session with me and I can clear that out for you, and then we can work from there. Because once you're free from these systems, it's a lot easier to recognize when they do come back. It's like Og was saying earlier, when you start becoming aware of this, once you're free from it for a little bit and then you feel something come back in, it's literally like they just put a big old bumper sticker on you. It's very obvious. You can feel it immediately and right away. And that's the problem, is most of us have grown up with these attacks and not even known what was going on. It was completely and totally invisible to us. And so we just thought it was a bunch of craziness going on inside of us. We thought our heads were running a million miles an hour just because that's the way our mind was, and we're feeling these impulses, this anger, this shame, this, jealousy, and we think it's normal. That's not normal. And so when you grow up with this type of a system, you never actually recognize it as an alien outside of you type of influence. And so once it's gone and you start really waking up and recognizing this, that's when you can start really doing some powerful work in this area. Because I mean, all it takes is just finding one and moving one, and you actually start to recognize how much better you feel. And then you start feeling the resonances of other attachments that you can go and clear out as well. And it's really, really powerful self-healing. This is exactly what I was talking about, how we are powerhouses of healing, and each one of us, by going into stillness and going inside the heart space, we can heal ourselves from the inside out, not just physically, not just mentally, not just emotionally, but energetically as well. So it's like I said, it's a multi-tiered thing, but there, even just one of those things doing that, you're going to lessen the grip that they have on you. And so the stronger you get at this, eventually you get to the point to where you're immune to it. You can feel it, you can recognize it immediately, and just kind of shrug it off.
Thank you. Anyone like to add to that?
I wanted to say there's a lot of information about the process we go through at night, and ultimately we go through a hypnagogic. It's like hypnagogic, but with A. It is a period where our mind begins to disconnect from the physical senses, and through that, the physical environment, along with the senses, basically slowly fade away one by one. I think hearing is the first to go. And then the perception, it's not proprioception, there's a tactile sensation. It's just the word for how the brain perceives the body, the feeling of, sitting there or laying there. And everyone recognizes that going as the body basically becomes paralyzed, and you kind of feel like a rock or something. You kind of feel numb sitting there or laying there. And the mind has to relax in order for this to happen. That's connected with a lot of things. We do access that. We basically go into a theta state from beta, alpha, theta into delta, which is where you're completely asleep. Beta is higher consciousness, not higher consciousness, but wakeful consciousness, active consciousness. Gamma above that is higher consciousness, but practices must be undergone so that we don't overheat or throw off the balance. It's basically a little bit stressful to reach those states. Theta is right below waking. It's actually below a more relaxed alpha consciousness, and these are just brainwave states based upon hertz, which is just cycles per second of the electromagnetic energy. And there's an interesting aside. There's something called the God helmet, where they invented and this goes from some private projects to university public stuff, because it kind of started publicly, but they're not. The people have to go through this process everyone's going through in order to get to really before it all becomes public. But they created a little electromagnetic magnets on a helmet, and the person wearing that, they could tune the frequencies, the magnetic field that would be created. They started with magnets, and the person could experience whatever emotions, they have out-of-body experiences, the presence of a spiritual force, and of course they try to manipulate that to say in a lot of places that it means, it means the notion of spiritual essence, or the immaterial self, is obviously just an effect, but that's the whole point. It's an electromagnetic effect. It's a magnet, a spiritual energy. So there is a vulnerability there in that hypnagogic state. In there, a lot of people report, or some people, I should say some, not a lot, but they'll report music. I've always heard music ever since I was young. It, maybe comes and goes now because I don't sleep too regularly, but it's basically right before one starts to dream and sees the impressions. There's a linear order to the way the brain shuts down the senses, and it does that and restarts them, on the other side or inside your mind, or however you want to perceive that. Before the visuals begin and imprints start flashing, and then we find ourselves in a dream, whether we're lucid or not, the goal of these practices, or just exploring, might be to become lucid versus to go out as if we're journeying through a space, because we're actually thinking our way through a space. And the funny thing is that we might be thinking our way through physical space, but it's just set up in this type of projection system where it doesn't seem that way. And so in that state, that's where people report a lot of the time initial interference, entity contact, nightmarish dreams that are almost guided by something else, because you have the idea of stagnation, emotional stagnation, even through trauma, and that'll be, for the most part, localized to the memories or the theme or whatever it is that is tied into the interjection of that experience in our physical linear existence. Our conscious mind is aware of it, and then it goes unconscious. If there is, out of nowhere stuff happening, and it's not, what we can consider a normal nightmare, it's too real or too, I'm not giving any hinting towards cloning or anything like that, because that's a whole another story altogether. And somebody did mention that, but it is that subject is combined with this because of the heart aspect. All of that's utilized to in a mind control process, in a mind control operation or program. And it has to be influenced. It's as if it's a shield, and it has to be lowered for the lower areas, the energy system, the mind, the personality, fears, and whatever can be programmed in. So that's a big thing there, and that actually kind of blindly led myself to where I was going. Well, the heart is in a way a protection. It is. If there's an entity or a parasite that feeds on it, so then it feeds on the disharmony, and you could see that as the energy system becoming stagnant because of a frequency entanglement where it's not being released properly, therefore there's not going to be the flow. Well, it's almost like a dam or something backing up the water, and now there's water flooding the plain right over there in the grass. And so a parasite or an entity of that magnitude or order, and it could be just technology or an individual like that, because that's where this kind of led. It basically, whether it causes the disharmony or not, it profits, maybe by nature of feeding and nourishment on that excess energy. But so that's where I was kind of leading to before, where it can't feed on an awakened heart system. That's kind of where that guy kind of maybe thought about, or was hinting at, where he said there's an idea that the heart can't be infected, which I would say if the shield is up, as you could call it, then that rings true. If the shield's down, that doesn't ring true. So that's where that kind of that concept goes to, or a clarification on that. But so with that whole, to wrap all that, I guess, together, that it's something rerouting the energy and to provide nourishment in the dream state, whether it's an astral state or not. There's a division between lucid dreaming, just regular dreaming like it's memories, and almost brain chatter that has to kind of express desires and things like that, curiosities. And then there's projection and things like that, or remote viewing. And so in that, and more so not remote viewing, because that's still a spiritual process, if you will, but that's connecting more so with the physical plane, or attempting to. And so in that state, that dreaming state, it's as if the material, physical happening of that scenario, that event, that situation, the room, wherever person is, it's not real. It's as if it's literally akin to virtual reality, that it's in the energy, in the mind, possibly in the brain, if it's purely just regular dreaming. And so it just like when you hold an idea in your head, everything reflects, all reflects to itself. When you hold an idea, there's no physical, table in your head. It's the idea. It's kept up in neurochemical processes and an energetic field in and around the body. So with all of that tied together, ultimately it comes down to frequency at that point, that nothing's actually grabbing a person or chasing a person, but two frequencies of maybe an entity and maybe an individual are kind of competing at that point. And so then I kind of just want to wrap that all together with with Eric. Eric has a lot of good information, a lot of motivation, clarity, inspiration. The visualization process is the reflection of our intentions. In a dream state, the visualization process is what plays out the dream. It's our intentions, whether we're paying attention to it or not. Our intentions play out. If you feel a nightmare coming on and you've practiced lucidity, and you instantly, make a proverbial joke in the dream and, squash the, what's it called? Excuse me. The fear or whatever frequency or vibration that a person is feeling, that one is feeling, it'll completely change the experience. It'll nullify it, basically. Right. So with all that in mind, the intention is the source of the visualization, and the frequency and the energy is our embodiment in that plane. And so if there is a non-physical entity, it is the frequency that it is apparent through. That's its body. And so we combat that by raising our frequency. And with that, the intention, in that combined with visualization, because it all becomes one, especially in the dream state. And it seems to come down to some, it's almost not literal because, again, there's no light in your head. It's just electromagnetic waves. But light seems to be information relevant to a certain frequency or intention, and darkness seems to be a stagnation or a lack of that creative power, that force of being or doing something in that state that we as free-willed individuals feel that we have. Ultimately, that's what we use to protect ourselves. That's if we're not programmed early on, and the natural, if you could say, programming of the function of the conscious mind or the unconscious mind is not, if somebody develops, through that for spiritual fruition or fulfillment, it is as if there is a shield or a layer of protection or some type of emission from the heart as a biogenerator. Ultimately, when the heart is emitting for some reason, and that whole system is tied together, that's not nourishment for an entity that relies on disharmony. Ultimately, it's very simple, because then it's harmonization, it's harmony within that field that nourishes us, and it's disharmony which produces an excess of energy, if you will, leaking out, and that nourishes something that opportunistically developed around that. But the whole parasite, to finish this little rant here, the whole parasite thing is interesting because now it is a combination of something that opportunistically nourishes itself off of the excess energy to actually enabling this process in society and to program individuals to operate as a source for their nourishment through this parasitic process. So at that point, it's not definitively a parasite, because it's also in a way a predator. So that goes back into these other talks that have been going on with the parasite, predator. I don't want to say AI, but it goes into all that. And that light is the protection.
Got it. Oh.
That was awesome.
Wow, holy nutty gazzetti. This is such a great conversation. Are you all enjoying this? Because I am. Woo!
I was loving the idea of cracking a joke in the middle of that. That would just throw so much off and throw such a huge wrench into the works. That was great.
Oh my gosh. Where's Justin? Are you there? We haven't heard from you, Justin Deschamps.
I am here.
All right. Thank you for that, Og. Thank you. Oh, Og, I'm sending you one of my hugs. Ready? Here it comes. There it is.
Got it.
All right. Listen. So maybe this is directed to all of you. Timothy asked this a while ago. How does the heart chakra affect the appearance and radiances of the aura? Does a very active heart chakra create a magenta hue in your aura or some other kind of color? He's curious because he just had an aura photo taken and it was magenta. Anybody? Justin, do you have an answer for that? Maybe?
I'm actually going to refer to Eric on this one. I think he'll probably be able to answer it better.
All right.
All right, I could definitely do that. So, like I said earlier in the show, I don't operate with a color system. I have all the colors integrated into my auric field, and my aura is a very, very bright gold. But before all of this happened, I actually was able to see my aura pretty clearly when I was doing different areas of work in the body. And whenever I was coming from a compassion-based, in the now energy space, I was always really bright green. The crown chakra correlates more with the magenta color, that violet color there, but the heart space, I've also seen it pink as well. So you might have like a mix of that violet and pink type of a mix mash together that's actually creating that magenta. Honestly, I really don't know. I can't say for sure. A lot of people just have a different colored aura. They have a different frequency that their personality vibrates at, and it shows up differently in Kirlian photography.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes. And can't entities make someone's aura lie, essentially?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. It's really interesting. Some of the clients that I've been working with, like when we're dealing with more of a artificially intelligent construct, more machine-like than anything. It's really interesting because there's different types of entities and stuff like that, but the more machine-like ones, they will actually reinforce the flow inside the body. So instead of like these nasty tar-like organic blockages that doesn't let anything through the flow, they will actually reinforce it so the flow is stronger, but they redirect it. They'll take it off of its pathway and they'll put it into specific places so that it'll feed specific areas in the body. And it's really interesting because you can see this overlay once you get past the brightness, because it's a really bright type of an auric field that these people have, and it's almost like it's like a false light being. It's really interesting the way that actually works, because they can manipulate all of that, and it's all for the specific goal of nourishment. And but it's just really interesting to see how many different layers of control systems there can actually be. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that I could go into about all of that. And one of the major things that I see with that type of a thing is not only the brightness, but like there is a vivaciousness. There's like an energy to the person. They don't look like somebody that you would expect to have like these major issues that are going on, because every single type of thing like this I've seen, it's usually more of a MyLab type of a thing too. When I start dealing with MyLabs, this is more the construct that I see right there. And so there's like a huge amount of like intelligence. There's a huge amount of like gumption and energetic flow to get stuff done. But there are massive traumas like in the wings that are like literally hidden behind the construct of what they've got going out there. And so that's definitely something that can actually happen right there. And it's not as frequent as you would think, but it's definitely not the least common thing I've ran into.
Anyone else? Spence, you got a comment to that, or Og?
That's I mean, anything that I could have said has already been said.
Okay.
As far as elaborating or anything, that just spirals off into tangents.
Tangents are okay.
Yeah.
I just don't want you all getting too tired or anything. Okay.
I can agree with that explanation. I think it's very complex. And the same very simple. Like colors are overall frequency, our overall appearance energetically is a combination, a coalescence of each successive layer. And so as each layer becomes stimulated or activates, every individual will have a shared frequency from throughout their system of other systems that are you could say interfering, but it's more like an exchange. And so why and what particularly is going on, that, I don't know. But it seems all reasonable. Somebody also said, I think earlier mentioned the question, what that feeling is going into the heart center and getting that rush. And then they asked if that could be interference, or trying to find the question. Breathing and feeling. When I focus on my heart and breathing, I get this feeling in my heart. It's hard to describe. It feels like something opens up and there is energy building up. Is that opening up the chakra or an indication of blockage? Here's the interesting part, which is probably going to be, not taken. Anyway, the opening up of the chakra or the energy or the awareness is simultaneous with the clearing or the indicating of blockage. Does that mean that experience is blockage or, a problematic? That's basically for the person to decide, or if somebody maybe was there to sense things or pay attention to other aspects or look at their life in a different way so that they could see what the maybe basically it's a cross between, is that a biological effect from food intake, not enough sleep or stress, anything like that, imbalance, or is it even a more, so this is where like the mental, the energetic, the immaterial reflects upon the biology, the neurochemistry, and the material, because that is basically where trauma is located, or just any type of stagnation. It's difficult to see how the parts interact, but it's easy to understand the flow. Trauma doesn't come from higher up, down. It comes from down and limits our journey into self-awareness, which links us back with that divine. and it can only be delayed, and it just makes for a longer, maybe more interesting experience. And that goes with the duality or the conspiracy versus intuition, whatever you want to call it, where some people believe that it's a trap system, if you will, and that we're not supposed to be here at all in the first place, and any time here is not necessary, and the whole concept of self-sacrifice and going through the work is an illusion. I think it's a combination of all of the above, basically. Going through the work over years and years and years, one could hit wall after wall and not really go anywhere. Going through it with proper guidance in a year, a few weeks, nights, you can change your entire experience. The thing with this universe is, in the body, in the mind, the system, is that you can change your entire experience in one second. You can have a complete shift of experience. And with the way I was mentioning how the conscious mind is basically reflective of the biological relation to neurochemical memory, which reflects the trauma of an actual event. I'm losing myself here. My train of thought here. I'm trying to tie together a lot of concepts, but basically, the biological functioning is relative to the conscious mind, the linear material 5 senses that get recorded on like a track in our memory. That's what's present, or that's what's hindering something if there is trauma. So it's relative to that biology. Then when there is no hindrance there is the immaterial self and the spiritual awareness. And when there is a hindrance in that, that's where then a different type. It's not so much trauma that is there, but an application of intention, of willpower, of effort, which is being asked for or requested. Ultimately, it's not that we have, this is a way to describe it, it's not that we have a right to be healed or a notion that is just automatic. It's that we have a duty to become aware of these issues and these things, the way the system works in harmony with biology and the immaterial self, and we have a duty to heal ourselves and to ensure that we get to that harmonious level and make that happen. That's where a question like that could go into why there's a specific feeling there. Just from the basics of having a feeling there, then that's more so along the lines of activation. And ultimately, it means that there's something that wants to be experienced, whether it's a clearing of trauma or a reception of that information. I'm kind of bouncing around all my tangents here, but maybe the main idea with that I want to conclude with is that, if I can conclude such a thing, that the conscious mind is the necessary, limited, linear projection of the unconscious, and through the merging of the heart element or aspect with the intention, the self-awareness, what we consider our personality, our identity, which in waking consciousness is largely in layers of ego down to the self that we basically never show anyone, the interior self. Ultimately, it's beyond language, which is kind of like a linguistic, symbolic organization. When we merge the awareness of the two, that's where we get a harmonization between fields, where there is disharmony or stagnation from either a traumatic event or essentially a stagnation where we were supposed to apply ourselves, but we merely did not, and we allowed a stagnation to occur. It's not necessarily that we're born a certain way or something like that. It's literally just in our life where we're putting our energy. Through all that, through that process, through that awareness, that combination of that, that's where everything becomes apparent. And that's where we get the way I describe it is that the emotional information relative to basically a non-locality, relative to the soul that is congruent across space-time boundaries and not just the relative particular identity that we hold to consciously in this particular chemical magnetic form we have, where it has to be that way because each reality would have to be different to a certain degree. So then what is congruent across all of them? And that would be this immaterial soul energy. Basically, to conclude and not really explain it fully, the emotions in that kind of theory is the first of awareness that we're getting of experience that is off in time. It's non-local, meaning it could be the past through this biological entanglement with the neurochemical process of memory and trauma or configuration, and then, if you will, the future, where the heart and the energetic system and the unconscious mind has the unique innate capability to see as if the entire timeline of experience happens simultaneously from its point of view. And so imagine there's a system there, a system of self that is simultaneously in access with all points of self across this timeline, where we get those impulses, or not the impulses, but the reception of energy when we are going into that heart-centered space of awareness and seeing. And at that point, basically just meaning that the decisions are made from the heart, making the heart checking, if you will, the intention process. The heart can't be deceived, the mind can be deceived. The heart can't lie, the mind can be tricked. When we're doing that, we're taking in information about where we're going to be, what's going to happen, and we're tapping into this, what can be called a soul blueprint plan, held in the unconscious, in the DNA, and it has access about what is not being materially presented now through this physical body and through this, what can be likened to a projection of time, of the present moment. So the emotions match that, just the basic level of emotions. Then when we get to that's where, love or loneliness or hate or whatever, those kind of fall into denser emotional categories, whereas when the heart is present, it is a more refined sense of the energetic spectrum, where duality is pretty much, in a way, transcended. So it would be love in the face of hate or darkness or something like that. It kind of is paradoxical in that sense. But when that information is relative, then the information we receive corresponds with a simultaneous occurrence of our self, our soul, across the various physical versions, in basically physical universes that we could be playing out these journeys in. And so it's kind of like gaining access to, almost as if it's a command center or something. But the idea is it's like a live update system, and it's guided through this projection process between the aspects of ourself in frequency, intention, and harmony. And so when we get to that level, that's where we can make changes in perspective, or that's where we, just like the heart being the primary influencing force, it creates the strongest electromagnetic field, and we're talking about logistically, that's where then we can change, the future aspect of our experience, or the future of our physical life, in an instant. In the same sense, that's where we have access to what could be perceived as the past, and in that way, trauma or programming or blocks, and we can clarify that. And in a strange sense, with this, just now I'm concluding it, with the holographic projection theory, it's that the back history, the backstory of each moment is created continuously, and the past is more of a projection. That goes into a whole other show and explanation, but the idea is that if you can change what one perceives as that back history, the way one looks at the memory, you don't have to delete the memory, you just look at it differently, that actually changes the past, and one can move on into the future in a version of the self which is free from these preconceived notions, this repetition pattern that previously showed no other possibilities for that. That's where the heart is a guide for all of this. It's a channel, a pathway for that, and that's why it's the center. The possibilities expand when the heart energy and harmonizes with the other levels and creates expansion through that. The possibilities decrease when we go into disharmony, and that's because the only real motion or the only real experience or knowledge is the knowledge of the self, and coming into that awareness, what the conscious mind can only glimpse of the true self across multitudes of layers or times or universes or dimensions, whichever way you want to look at it. And basically, it's just an interplay between linearity, consciousness, conscious mind, projection system, and the unconscious mind, which is basically a transcendent or vast network. It's ultimately not linguistically expressed. It's all frequencies and intentions, where the conscious mind works with linguistics and identity. It identifies through the linguistics. And that goes into a whole area about how you operate the mind, what language you use determines what access you have as far as possibilities, and it's like a construct that is created within the individual, which is a mirror image of the physical construct we're in now, and that goes into how the control system has been developed to rely on that, or at least to take advantage of that, to exploit that, and essentially work out these coding schematics which create the implants to the subconscious, the unconscious mind, and creates these resulting social behavior patterns in society or in reality.
Well, we all learned something today.
Get out the duct tape, boys. My mind was just blown. Wow. that was phenomenal.
We hold the power to change over everything. This is what I also forgot. Yeah. If something's in our field and going, I'm going to make you feel whatever, nothing that does that has power over the individual that it's trying to parasite off of. Every individual has this sovereign ability to simply say, go away. And we do that by saying, okay, you want me to feel this way? Oh, I feel this way. That we have a choice. That's the free will. That's the whole idea. But it actually, it transcends one across space and time through this soul information, which is telekinetically wrapped up in tachyon fields and hyperdimensions and all this interesting stuff.
Wow. Okay, this is amazing. Ooh, Justin, you want to comment? I haven't heard from Justin in a while.
I miss the crickets.
I know. I'm like, where's Justin and our crickets? Sweet. I know. Let's go. Yeah. Bring back Justin.
So, okay, let's narrow the focus a little bit. So what are we talking about exactly? All right, well, I'm just going to jump into, actually it was a question that I believe somebody had in relation to gray beings that they were seeing when they were waking up. I had shared an experience that Shem has, who writes the Discerning the Mystery blog. He apparently had the same type of experience. So if you do a Google search for Journal of an Abductee, and you either put Sit Show after it or Discerning the Mystery, you'll pull up that article. And one thing I commented on when I shared it is that, first of all, from a soul or cosmic perspective, every experience that we're having is divinely guided, even if it's negative, traumatic, disempowering, conspiracy, any of these things. It's all divinely guided from higher spiritual authorities. What I mean by that is, you can kind of think about it, the plans and the machinations of the controllers are completely enshrouded and enfolded in the plans of creation itself. So that's an important concept to think about, because what it means is that every experience that you're having, no matter how seemingly horrific or tragic, is all part of your spiritual awakening. And when you can actually open yourself to accepting the fullness of what your experience is giving you, that's when you free yourself from trauma. So again, if trauma is the rejection of experience, then any time that you're trying to run away or hide or reject an experience you're having, you're creating trauma for yourself, which is going to start to close the heart chakra, which means the energy is going to build up in the solar plexus and lower areas, and this is going to allow negative entities to come in and feed off of you. So I would propose that any experience you're having is part of your spiritual evolution, and if you can embrace it in that sense, it'll help guide you and it'll pull you out of this traumatic mindset. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you should just allow somebody to steamroll over you. So with this in mind, you could think about the experience of being contacted by these gray entities as either part of an activation that you're going through in a cosmic level. At a more specific level, what if these grays that you're seeing are part of some kind of soul group, and they're trying to monitor you because you are a starseed or a wanderer from that soul group? Which, if you don't know what that is, that's basically your soul came from this soul group that has an extraterrestrial origin, and you're incarnating here for some type of specific purpose in that regard. So that could be a possibility. Or it could be a situation where these are negative beings. They are here to try to do experimentation on you and whatnot. And I would argue if it's happening to you, a part of you needs to go through this experience, but you can also use protective measures to protect yourself, and that's what Eric was getting into with the energy and using gold and white light. So to kind of wrap it all together in the heart discussion that we're having with the heart chakra here, when you allow yourself to accept the truth of your experience, even though it may not be something that you desire, you inform your energy fields, you inform your consciousness so that you can actually make a grounded and holistic choice, not from fear and not from trauma. So that could be a one way to deal with the situation, to just ask yourself, well, why am I even having this experience at all? What is this teaching me? And then you can start to go through processes of how to deal with it and free yourself from it if it's something deleterious. And I'll leave it at that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Justin. Thank you. So, folks, my goodness, we are getting into, we're almost done with our third hour here. We've had one break. As we wind down here, I wanted to, before we close, I wanted to make sure that we've covered, that we're not forgetting anything that any one of you wanted to get out. Does that make sense? I'm not even sure if I'm saying that right. I want to make sure we cover all the points that you wanted to say about heart chakras. So is there anything we haven't covered that you would like to cover?
Geez, I can't really think of anything. I think we, covered just about everything there from all angles. That was a really great conversation.
Phenomenal.
We did
It's great.
come to a lot of we came at it from a lot of different angles, and that's what this situation needs. This world situation we're all in. What Justin just said, he reminded me of what I meant when it was basically when there's what could be conceived as trauma, but is really stagnation. It's that when we hit a situation that could, per that earlier definition of turning away from the experience, qualify as trauma, it's that we refuse to acknowledge it and work on healing. It's like there is a duty to healing, and if we don't acknowledge that duty to heal as a self-healer or even seek out healing, it very much so, maybe, not the term righteously, but it reasonably continues. And that ties into what he was saying before, where what he was saying kind of ties into what I was saying as far as the soul view, where everything kind of happens for a reason. And you could kind of say the resolution of the paradox of having simultaneous times and spaces within a single one and accessing that from a conscious mind that is connected, in this transcendent pattern to the unconscious, is that from each angle of perspective, each different physical universe or different time or whatever it is, there is somehow a simultaneous connection in all the other parts, in all the other presences that we hold. And so when there's an experience here or there, ultimately it's connected to some event or some happening in time or some happening in another layer of ourself that we're not aware of at this time physically. Through that, you can kind of see that there's a divine congruence. There's a divine similarity between all these layers, which would be like having a kaleidoscope mixed with a blender and a tornado, and then coming out with like a mandala, where it's all connected geometrically, proportionally similar, and there's meaning throughout it. So it kind of resolves that paradox of really, the ultimate paradox is that the conscious self cannot fully attain the awareness of the true self, but it can glimpse it through these processes, and that's not to negate the process. It's to say it's meaningless because the universe is infinite, or the experience of time or whatever itself is infinite. So we have an infinitesimally small amount of that knowledge now, so there's no point in going on. What I perceive is that it means that it never ends in a spiritually satisfying or fulfilling manner or perception, to the degree where if there is a completion cycle of all the 12 octaves of experience in the universe and times and spaces and selves, that it's not the type of experience where, okay, that's the end of the movie, that's the end of this, whatever it is. It would be at that point the most satisfying thing in the entire universe of experience. which is a paradox because it's something we can never get fully. We can't really win that game, but every time we play it, we result in eternal fulfillment. As long as there's, I think it happens anyway. It just takes more time if there is delay, because energy can't really be destroyed, and there's, if you will, there's no limit, there's no rent for the amount of particles in the universe. It's continuous. But through that acknowledgement of that self-similarity, that temporal symmetry across planes and layers, and seeing that something that's happening now can be explained by something that's happening in another way, and that's why, it's really a lack of self-awareness, or a introduction of more self-awareness coming in to existence. That's what the heart is telling us whenever it's telling us anything. And that through that, it's as if there's this divine congruence, this reason behind everything, this understanding, and all it's doing is bringing information about the true self, which is, we could call it the soul, which is just an aspect of the self across different temporal planes or boundaries, and that this is immaterial, and so it's not identified with a name or a word or a logo or a badge or a shape or a category. It's like the way a person's aura coalesces to create an overall artistic experience of, oh, this is what it is. That's what our true self is. And so the more we come into contact with that, the more we express it, the more we gain that access into and beyond the linear working of the conscious mind, time and space, that paradox. And that paradox becomes, instead of just this endless, impossibility, it becomes an endless impossibility that's happening, and it's nourishing us, and it actually produces. To wrap that up, we're kind of the humanity's been experiencing a rerouting of that possibility, of that self-awareness, of the time, the variables in the process. And so we're having the experience of spiritual beings that can do, for all intents and purposes, anything. Whatever the brain can create, well, we can do that with our minds. Looking at people, you naturally have neurons that mirror image, that mirror create the mirror neurons, whatever the tangibility or the tactile sensation that the other person is providing for someone or going through. And so it's like we're designed to do that. And another interesting aspect is that during tests with certain sociopathic or psychopathic brains, those neurons were dead through a prison study. And so, yeah, I lost myself again, but you get the idea. It's all connected, and it's all for a purpose.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm going to ask one quick question for myself, because I'm still learning about chakras. Where does forgiveness lie?
Forgiveness is knowing there's nothing to forgive. It's the immediate rerouting of not allowing something to impact you or attach to you. It's an immediate bypass to that, where whether you can choose to hang on to something and say, oh, there's this inherent thing that somebody did to me, or I feel wrong, this and that, and that in and of itself is just allowing something to prey on outside of you, letting an experience linger for longer than it need be. So to me, forgiveness is just that. Forgiveness is knowing there's nothing to forgive, and not trying to fill in somebody else's shoes, and knowing that it's not you that they have a problem with, or even to an extent, like if we can't forgive ourselves for something, it's a matter of knowing that's coming from somewhere else. That's not us. That is not in the sense preying on us, but has every opportunity and potential to do that. And to me, that's just one of those beautiful little loopholes of just staying steadfast, patient in the moment. Just that's not my circus, not my monkeys.
Yeah, love that. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I know our listeners are enjoying this. I thoroughly am, and I believe you guys are too, huh? What a Friday night. It's fantastic.
Great stuff.
I'm really enjoying this.
Before, could I say something else? Just off of what Spencer said, forgiveness. So imagine the soul, reality, blueprint, time matrix spectrum. The possibilities we allow into each square of possible realities, where everything must be at least 1 point different physically, but it's actually the same immaterial consciousness. Each introduction of causality of an influence pushes us either towards self-awareness or away from it. When we're completely decided by external programming and basically we become not aware of the self, that means the energy is being taken from an ascent towards self-awareness into basically a deviation. So it's basically being wasted, or it's being used for someone else who's made use of those processes. When a causality, when the decision to make a change in the variables of one of those realities is based upon what you could identify as maybe the immaterial self or the true self, at that point it doesn't benefit the physical biology. It would at that point accentuate it or even go against it. When people want to heal or overcome boundaries. For instance, if somebody has every reason to fear or hate an individual or whatever that is, and there's really no reasons like that, like Spencer said, there's no, nothing to forgive. When that power of the self, the power to create, the power to decide or determine from the center of the self what the next change in that variable will be, it gets taken away, it gets drawn out in the center. So as a reflection, when every change is made from that immaterial self, from the self within, and it is towards more self-awareness, instead of a rejection of the information that's coming through, the reality, the self, whatever it is, but an acceptance and a knowing, and not just an acceptance of like rolling over, like somebody said, but, excuse me, I think Eric, but just an over unifying acceptance. That's where that love of the heart also incorporates forgiveness, and where the heart would feel pain, and feel hurt, but of going beyond that. And that's where that's the same, area, different words, different meanings even. And our language doesn't really do us justice for that. But when we incorporate that self-awareness, for instance, through forgiveness, where it is the immaterial self which benefits from forgiveness. One could say there's a biological function to make as many friends as they can, and that way you get a little bit of dopamine or serotonin or whatever it is, that we feel friendly because we forgave somebody, and therefore it's just it's an illusion, it's a biological illusion. Ultimately, when nothing is expected, when it's without return, when it's from the heart, that purely benefits the immaterial self, and it draws whatever box in that time grid matrix of realities, it draws it towards the power of what's happening next, the changing factor or function of the variables within it, to be geared towards nurturing the self and introducing more self-awareness or knowledge. And we can feel the ebb and flow when the heart goes up or down with that. But that main idea is a quick cheat sheet. Just like he said, you can nullify a parasitic process. The cheat sheet is to simply forgive. Right, which wolf are you feeding? To forgive every instance you can. To forgive, to accept, to let go of the preconceptions, the fears, to not react to that interference with fear, because that is like an alternator or a generator for that nourishment, but to react with peace and love and forgiveness, and ultimately all the power goes back to the self. It can't be rerouted, it can't be changed, it can't be faked or reproduced. It instantly conserves that energy, and our entire reality corresponds, reflects to reflect basically that happening, that intention, that process. And I believe it is through that fractal implosion field in the heart that when that happens, it is like sending out pulse waves of the radiant energy, which aligns and correlates or corresponds reality to that internal intention, to the self. That's all I wanted to basically say today.
Well, thank you. I so much to reflect upon from this evening.
Well, here, let me jump in there real quick.
Sure.
Let's just add one more angle to this real quick here. So when I'm working with people who practice self-forgiveness, what I find is that there's a lot more flow inside of the root area. And the root is where I find that most of the trauma is actually held onto with the parasitic construct in there. And so it was said earlier that like when you go through traumatic situations, you can eventually move the energy up and out of the body. And that's exactly how I see it happening. Because what happens is like when the original trauma happens, it's very visceral. This is more in the lower abdomen, and as you start to move it up through the solar plexus area, you start to step up on top of that and stop being more in the victim type of mentality. And once you go through the heart space, you can actually transmute it. Then the throat, you can talk about it. The mind, you can cogitate it, and then eventually leave it completely and totally out of the body. You've integrated it in. You've become much stronger because of it, and it's not a weakness. It's a strength. You've learned from it, and it's really interesting because when people practice self-forgiveness, that blockage is really, really small in the root area, if not nullified completely and totally. And so this is where most of the energy actually starts flowing through the body. It's at the base of the spine, up to the top of the head, and down the front, so it makes a cycle. And whenever there's a pinch point or a choke point in there anywhere, it makes it so it's a lot harder for you to get the actual flow through the body with that electromagnetic current. And so by practicing forgiveness, I see people are much, much more open energetically. They have a lot more flow, a lot more control over their internal abilities and their ability to connect into the heart space. Forgiveness is very, very important, very important.
And you know what, fellas? And thank you, Eric. I'm going to have to wind it down here. I've got, it's telling me 3 minutes, so here we go. I want to thank, I know, right? I want to thank each of you and OM to the G. Okay, next Thursday night, September 15th, Jim Nichols, Tolek, Stuart Swerdlow, Mark Kimmel, Cheyenne Stone, Adonis. September 16th, Amy Matre, Kovrick, Cosmic Sovereignty. I want to thank my guests this evening, and I do hope you fellas will all come back because I have thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed this evening on the Heart Chakra. The archive will be available right after the show. So you guys, gracious thank you. We were talking to Og Telez, Spencer Eskridge, Eric Rains, Justin Deschamps. You can find all their information in chat. I will post it again. I'm your host, Yvonne Palermo. Folks, happy Friday evening to you. There are two wolves, and they are always fighting. One is darkness and despair. The other is light and hope. Barbara out there, which wolf wins, my friend? Because you typed it. That was kind of cool. It's whichever one you feed. So you guys remember, be safe, be kind, be courageous. Courageous. This is Groovy Bean signing out. You guys, I want to thank you again. A fantastic show. I love each and every one of you. You guys
Very
here?
welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, you're
Thank
so
you.
welcome. Justin, thank you. Are you still with us, Justin? We got 1 minute left.
I'm here, Groovy
There
Bean.
he is, Groovy Bean.
And it was a groovy show.
Yes, and thank you, listeners. Don't forget to go to www.fulldisclosurenow.com. We do have a calendar up there as well, you guys, so stay in the know. And I'm gonna give everybody a hug, and I really hope the four of us can do this again, because this was a fan-friggin-tastical evening of amazeballs. So there you have it. And
I loved all the angles. There was so many angles. Like, we covered everything. Right? It was great.
Fantastic. Okay, you guys, signing out. I've got to wind this down. Love you all, and we'll talk to you next week.
Begin auto-destruct sequence. Authorization Picard 47 Alpha Tango.
I'll be back.
We are the Borg. Lower your shields and surrender your ships. We will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our own. Your culture will adapt to service us. Resistance is futile.
Assimilate this.
Starbucks to all Vipers, do not fire! Repeat, do not fire! I am a friendly, okay? We're all friendlies! So let's just be friendly!